Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини, та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались в кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у чах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великої страны.
Найкращий пастух баранячих отар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Хто води всяке озброєння різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів, робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, там вбивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить, хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ, тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар.
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 Yes.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 1198 of the War News stream. And we have massive news right now of a possible Russian IRBM launch and malfunction that we just witnessed over the skies earlier today. Also, Ukraine has struck major Russian air bases in Bryansk region, and also Israel's launched even more attacks on Lebanon for a very long time, actually. It's a brand new attack in the middle of Lebanon today in Beirut, and it's a lot of news to cover, and it's good to see you all once again.
And, of course, we're going to be covering the past 24 hours of news from around the world, as we've been able to hear that the Ukrainian armed forces have conducted significant attacks today against Russian airfields inside the Bryansk Oblast, as well as Ryazan. We have also been able to hear that apparently one of the refineries in Saratov has also been hit, and we have been able to hear of active air defenses near to the area of Voronezh, as the Ukrainians have detonated and destroyed another Russian railway bridge at the 111-kilometer milepost near to the city of Voronezh just earlier today. We also were able to hear of a possible IRBM launch failure over the area of the North Kazakhstan region, as a large field of debris was seen detonating and burning within the upper atmosphere, possibly a failed Oreshnik launch from the Russian Federation, or it could also be likely that it was some sort of falling satellite debris. We will be covering that in as much detail as we have here very soon. We have also been able to hear inside the Middle East that the state of Israel is now conducting a renewed air campaign against the Lebanese and Hezbollah, as well as we've been able to see a large bombing operation being conducted throughout the entirety of southern and central Lebanon, including the city of Beirut, where a large amount of airstrikes have been conducted around the southern suburbs of the Dahiyah district of the city of Beirut, specifically near to the Beirut Rafik Hariri International Airport. And we were able to hear that apparently the Hezbollah version of Scooby-Doo said, Raggy, we were getting bombed. Nevertheless, we also were able to hear that the Islamic Republic of Iran has ordered hundreds of parts for ballistic missiles from the People's Republic of China, according to information that was published today, while at the same time, The state of Ukraine has also been able to attack another Russian train near to the area of Krasnodar Krai, and there is an ongoing drone attack that is currently being conducted against Crimea that has also been accompanied with Neptune anti-ship missiles that have been changed out to a surface-to-surface attack role. We have also been able to hear that Russian Federation forces have been encircled inside the town of Tetkino today, and it appears that the Russian Federation is going into absolute panic mode, as nearly several companies of Russian infantry, foot infantry, have been stuck inside of the city for the course of several hours today with absolutely no possibility of a breakthrough by the Russians, freeing these Russians from their encirclement at this moment. We have also been able to see that Ukrainian armed forces have been able to stabilize the Sumy offensive as of today, and it appears that the Russians have finally run into a solidified defensive line created by the Ukrainians near to the H07 motorway. We have also been able to hear that Ukrainian armed forces have successfully held all front lines and stopped any Russian offensives of significant notoriety from gaining any significant amounts of ground over just the past 24 hours alone. Meanwhile, we have also been able to hear that the Russian Federation is conducting an absolutely massive attack against the state of Ukraine with missile and drone forces, most likely their retaliation for the Operation Spiderweb attacks, which occurred only a mere few days ago. It has been a pretty big day of news, as many of y'all can tell, and we have a lot to go over and cover with all of y'all in the news tonight. I gotta tell y'all, every single day at this point is a chock-full news day. I say that almost every single night, and every single night it ends up being true, crazily enough, and we're gonna be getting y'all into the depth and detail of the news to the greatest scope and ability that we can tonight with the information that we have available to us at this moment, which is quite heavy in terms of detail. But moving us on into the Russian Federation, as we have been able to hear of those significant attacks that have occurred throughout the territory of the Russian Federation overnight by Ukrainian drones, but more significantly within the Bryansk area, and specifically near to the Bryansk airfield. The Bryansk airfield is not incredibly close to the city of Bryansk. It actually is out here. This is a little bit of a bizarre thing, as many of y'all will note, that usually airfields or airports are usually quite close to their main cities. The actual airfield of the Bryansk city area is actually about 10 miles away from the city center of Bryansk, and therefore it's a little bit of an anomaly and an outlier and makes it a little bit hard to geolocate. Nevertheless, we were able to see video footage of the Ukrainian armed forces striking the airfield and also creating a significant explosion. This was the first picture that was seen of it on any kind of media out there in the world. It was first published on Twitter, and minutes after the attack had occurred, and we were already able to see a significant large-scale explosion occurring at the Bryansk airfield, with mushroom clouds rising as a result of the explosions. We were then able to see a little while later that film was actually starting to emerge of the initial explosions from the first attack that was conducted by the Ukrainian drones on the Bryansk airport, which we can see in this clip right here. We see one explosion right there.
Oh, damn. That was a big one. Not the reaction I was expecting, really.
Oh. That appears to be the big one.
What, they have children working at this company or something? Why there's like a bunch of teenagers running around?
Matthew, the Russians saw kids playing Minecraft and they said, see, the children, they yearn for the mines, and they put them right back to work. There's no such thing as child labor laws in Russia. Children have a right to work in Russia, as a matter of fact. I don't know what was up with that, though. I don't know why that many kids were hanging around like a delivery company of some kind. Not entirely sure on that. But we also were able to see that the airport was on fire and burning quite significantly. After this picture emerged, we then were able to get a secondary picture, once again showing us the large mushroom cloud and the roaring inferno that had been created near to the area of the Bryansk airport. From what we were able to tell, this video was actually being filmed somewhat close to the airport itself, somewhere around this warehouse right here, looking towards the northern apron of the airfield. This gives us an idea that at least what we were watching was an explosion that may have happened directly onto this tarmac, or directly onto this area, which could be called Matthew, what would be the technical term, since you would know the technical terms at this point incredibly well, of this area of the airport right here where the aircraft would be parked for loading and unloading?
I guess you could just call it part of the tarmac, I guess. Honestly, I'm not sure if there is a specific name for it. If there is, I'm not really sure.
Yeah, because I was wanting to say it was the terminal, but I was like, it's not really a building with jet bridges or anything like that here. It's just literally a concrete pad that the aircraft are sat out on. So I guess we could call it the pad if we want to call it anything specific, but it does appear that the explosion occurred somewhere near to the area of this pad, at least from the viewpoint that we were able to see in all of these pictures and videos, which was filmed somewhere around right here. The explosion was significant, and we were able to see that this was continuing on for quite some time, and we also were able to even see a closer up video of the explosion itself. Here's that clip. Now, that was a crazy one. Let's watch that again. And let me turn up the audio so that we all can hear the reactions of the Russians on the ground as they watch the thing vaporize itself. Now, that is pretty impressive right there. That I will have to say. From what we are largely able to tell, it may have been a shipment of Iskander or KN-23 ballistic missiles that was hit, or it may have actually been that the Bryansk airport is now being used for military operations by the Russians, and they were able to hit a temporary ammunition cache that had been created to support those temporary operations at the airport. We do not have exact information as to why these explosives were at the airport yet, and why they were targeted so successfully and destroyed by the Ukrainians, but the damage is going to be incredibly significant to the Bryansk airport, and not only that, a significant amount of pad has mostly been cratered now as a result of the significant explosion. Nevertheless, we have also been able to hear of other major attacks that the Ukrainians conducted overnight as well, as we were able to hear near to the Ryazan area that the Ryazan airbase had also been attacked and hit, along with the Diaghilevo airbase elsewhere in the Russian Federation. We were able to see clips right here, we're assuming near to the area of Ryazan, and I'll be showing y'all exactly where Ryazan is. Here is Ryazan. We are assuming that this actually was somewhere close to the area, and I do want to point out to y'all that this was actually one of the air bases that was supposedly attacked quite recently during Operation Spiderweb. We did get some video and picture evidence to corroborate and confirm that this airbase had been attacked during the course of Operation Spiderweb, and it appears that it actually came under attack again just a few hours ago as Ukrainian drones began to hurtle themselves onto the area and started to hit more Russian logistical equipment at the airbase, along with possible aircraft as well.
It's really kind of shocking that Ukraine's able to hit so many different airfields. This time they didn't need the secretive trucks to go rolling right up to the airfield and release the drones. They just actually sent the missiles in this time and just hit it on their own, which is really showing a severe lack of air defense quite badly.
Honestly, man, like, you know what's funny is that the Russians treated the Ukrainian drones during Operation Spiderweb like cockroaches. They were like, oh, quick, get out the shoe and stomp them, inspect all the 18-wheelers. And then once they were inspecting the 18-wheelers, because they're like, they surely can't fly out of the container boxes, the Ukrainian drones just fly over the border and start attacking even more air bases anyways. It's like when you're trying to kill the cockroach and it starts flying. And that's pretty much the equivalent of what the Ukrainian drones just did over the past few hours. But we can see a significant fire burning near to the area of the Ryazan Air Base. We were also able to see more clip of the fires and explosions as well.
Also, thank you to everybody in the chat. It's called the ramp, by the way. What you were looking at, that pad, that's technically called the ramp, according to an Air Force crew chief.
I was thinking it was the ramp. I wasn't really sure on that, though, because there are, I know railway terminology incredibly well, but airport terminology is something that I knew well for a while, and I haven't brushed up on a lot recently, and I've forgotten a good bit of it. So thank you, everyone, for correcting me and saying that that is the ramp, and it's not just the pad. The pad is a very indescript and not technical term. We also got to see the continuing fire and burning at the airfield later on in the day, right here in this clip. And then moving on from that clip and on into our last one, we also got to see a picture of the smoke and flames rising from the Ryazan airfield. It is quite clear at this point that the Russian Federation sure as hell is taking a lot of hits to their air bases and airfields throughout the Russian Federation. And one thing is incredibly clear, whether it's Operation Spiderweb, pretty much dropping the drones off right at the air base's doorstep, or if the Ukrainian drones are flying hundreds of miles into the Russian Federation, the Russian Federation has such little air defense, there really is not a difference between the two types of attacks. The only difference in the last attack during Operation Spiderweb is that the Ukrainians managed to hit the Alenia airbase as well as the Belaya airbase, which had prior been out of range of Ukrainian drones. That was really the only difference. Beyond that, within the areas that are in range of Ukrainian drones, which is about 850 miles deep into the Russian Federation away from Ukraine's borders, it still appears that a lot of these air bases are not safe, and a lot of them can easily come under attack, and the aircraft and facilities there can be destroyed by the Ukrainians with a great deal of ease. A lot of people have actually been talking about Ukraine striking Russia's Bryansk airport just tonight, hitting missiles that were aimed at Ukraine, and a lot of people are wondering, why is Russia's air defense failing so badly? They have practically no air defense throughout the country, and I want to point that out again because that's something that we've known for a long time now. Air defense is sparse, if non-existent, in most areas, and we've been able to see that outside the Moscow area and the Kerch Bridge region, there is quite literally almost no air defense to be found in most areas of the Russian Federation. A lot of people have believed that this could be because the Russian Federation actually does have enough air defense systems, but because they're so poorly trained with a low amount of resources, they may not be able to engage and destroy a lot of these incoming air targets. A lot of other people are believing that Russia just simply doesn't have enough air defense equipment or air defense systems to be able to defend their skies properly, and this is why we see that there are such giant holes in the Russian air defense that allow for Ukrainian drones to have a very high success rate when attacking the country. Others are saying that it might be something else, and a few are saying that they're unsure and undecided. But Matthew, what are people thinking about this, and what are you thinking about it as well?
So about 54% of the audience said Russia simply doesn't have enough air defense systems to protect all these different sites, while 36% said they're probably just horribly trained and have very low resources to actually carry out air defense, and 5% said it seems like something else. And honestly, the Russia's strategy right now when it comes to air defense is to hoard air defense around Moscow, hoard it around the Kerch Bridge, any target that is deemed to be a propaganda value of any sort. That's where they start hoarding a bunch of air defense. Putin is not really taking the mentality of let's try to spread out the wealth necessarily of air defense and let's protect a bunch of different sites. His mentality is let me hoard it for myself and the Moscow elites, and everybody else can be on their own. Even the military airfields are not well protected, and pretty much the only air defense they have around those sites is small arm fire from the soldiers and also some very, very primitive air defense and not very high tech like Moscow has or the Kerch Bridge has. So it's pretty lacking actually. Like we're seeing right now, they're striking several different airports and airfields, and they're not protected whatsoever. The drones are able to come right in, smack right on the middle of them, and there's nothing holding it back. So I would say it's probably Russia simply doesn't have enough because it's being hoarded in particular areas inside of Russia that benefits solely Putin personally, which is obviously a humongous flaw in Russia's defenses, but very good for Ukraine when it comes to hitting things. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that I believe that the Russians do not have enough air defense, and also there is a significant lack of training and low resources available for air defense wherever it may exist. We have been able to see throughout the war that a large amount of air defense systems of all varieties have been destroyed inside of the Ukrainian war, inside of occupied Ukraine by the Ukrainian armed forces, because a lot of these air defense systems have not been designed or protected against FPV drones or any kind of smaller long-range Ukrainian drones, which has allowed for some of Russia's finest air defense systems like the S-400 and the S-300, along with Russia's more closer range frontline systems like the Tor M1, the Pantsir S1, the two S6 Tunguskas, the Shilkas, along with a whole bunch of other air defense systems to be targeted and destroyed quite easily, with really even a major fight between the two systems and the drones pretty much taking them in droves. We've been able to see that this has resulted in the Russian Federation not having enough air defense systems that spread around the active front, much less the entirety of the Russian Federation. We do have to remember that the Russian Federation, even for the area of land it controls in Europe, is quite large. The Russian Federation is the largest country on Earth, and while this map greatly overportrays the size of Russia, it still ends up encompassing around 15% of the landmass of the entirety of the globe in its current state, meaning to be able to cover even just the western part of Russia, west of the Ural Mountains, it would take a absolutely exorbitant amount of air defense systems to be able to cover such an area like that. And the Russian Federation, even before the war, simply did not have the means or the ability to protect against these smaller drones throughout the entirety of western Russia. Now, with a greatly reduced amount of anti-air defense systems, they are having to see that a lot of their air defense systems are getting focalized within specific areas, like the city of Moscow and also the Kerch Bridge. These serve to be not only important for propaganda purposes, but the city of Moscow itself is important for propaganda and strategic purposes. The city of Moscow holds 10% of the entire Russian population within one city's walls, and the fact that the Russian Federation has to be able to protect these sorts of locations is a very important one. If the city of Moscow is brought under attack, around 10% of the entirety of the Russian population can be brought into straight pandemonium as a result of the drone attacks. So with that in mind, I would generally have to say that I would believe that it's a mix of a lack of training, and not only that, it would also be a lack of equipment as well that is resulting in the Ukrainians having such a wide range of successful attacks throughout the whole of the Russian Federation. Not only that, but they didn't just hit the major airfields at Ryazan and Bryansk Bryansk overnight, they also have hit the Saratov oil refineries once again. And we were able to see video and picture evidence confirming that the oil refinery at Saratov had been hit. Just to quickly show y'all where this oil refinery is, if we go to Saratov and then we go into the southern area right here, you can actually see the Ventmontage oil refinery right here. This is a smaller company in the Russian Federation, but still, this oil refinery is able to refine, I believe it's somewhere around 120,000 barrels of fuel per day, meaning that hits or any damage caused to it is going to be causing the Russians a decent amount of additional damage to at least their economic standing. We see the fire burning in the distance. The cameraman is great at filming the actual focal point. We see the smoke cloud, but we really can't see the fire below. Moving on from that, we got to see a clip better showing off the fire. This actually appears... go ahead.
It looks like they hit maybe some of the storage drums of the oil or something. I couldn't tell. It didn't look like the main part of the refining plant. It looked like maybe some storage barrels or something.
It looks like that may have actually been the target. It's really hard to tell from these kinds of distances, but it looks like that may have been the case. We still see the smoke rising over the refinery. But also, from what we're understanding, most of these videos are being filmed from the northern area of Saratov, looking across the Volga River and then down into the area of the refinery. It is interesting to note, by the way, that this oil refinery is literally within spitting distance, only 10 miles away from the Ingles Air Base, which has been a significant air base used to conduct bombing raids against the Ukrainians throughout the entirety of the war. So a little bit funny to see that the attacks against the refinery were successful. Once again, this close to another major Russian air base housing Russia's strategic bomber force. We also got to see in one more picture the smoke rising, and we actually got to see a little bit of the oil refinery's main condensing towers and also smokestacks out there in the distance. But beyond that, it does appear that another oil refinery has been successfully hit, and maybe signaling the beginning of a renewed Ukrainian drone attack campaign against Russia's critical oil refineries, which are the main economic engine of the Russian Federation's survival at this point on a domestic level. Outside
also,
of that,
something else to notice as well, real quick, just to sort of point this out, notice that Ukraine is ramping up these attacks on the refineries once again, and also they're ramping up their attacks on various different targets like the airfields, the air bases, Operation Spiderweb, and all these other things. They're all ramping all this stuff up, and yet you're not seeing really any negative reaction from the United States, because remember, the United States was pushing the peace talks really, really strongly a short while ago. Now, all of a sudden, the United States is taking a step back. They're stepping away from the peace talks, and now Ukraine's attacking in full force, and there's no pushback so far. So that's a good sign. We're still giving Ukraine a bunch of equipment, and Ukraine is going on the offensive into mainland Russia, and there is no pushback. So I would say that's a good sign that Ukraine is going to be supported into the future and not abandoned merely because they're attacking inside of Russia.
I would have to say, hopefully that will be the case. It appears that at the moment, that's a high likelihood right now, because once again, like Matthew was saying, we're not really seeing a negative response from the United States. It seems to be an incredibly moot one, so it may be showing that we're going to slowly start shifting our support back to Ukraine. Meanwhile, we also got to see near Voronezh that there was an ongoing attack near to the city of Voronezh, and air defense inside of the city was attempting to fire at the incoming drones. We also hear a helicopter.
That famous air defense.
Man, the air defense in Russia is truly one of a kind in the world. Not in its ability, but just in how bad it is. Bro, somebody out there with a 9mm here in Voronezh firing up into the air at the incoming drones. Beyond that, it is very interesting to see and nice to know there has been some ongoing attacks at Voronezh. And y'all thought that the attacks in Russia ended there, didn't y'all? Oh no, the Ukrainians are actually starting to try and appease me a little bit in news coverage every night and find a way to include a train segment without me having to force it in. And just right outside the city of Voronezh, at the 111-kilometer milepost on one of the Russian main lines traveling from the city of Moscow and further south towards the city of Rostov-on-Don, we were able to see that another significant attack has occurred on Russia's railways, bringing railroad traffic to a complete stop in this area. 26 long-distance trains are currently experiencing experiencing delays, and that is not the car. Those are not the freight trains, mind you. Those are just the passenger trains that were running at that hour of night, showing that the entire main line appears to be completely blocked at this point from the damage caused by this explosion. And we can see that in this clip right here. I never heard of a bicket. Apparently that's something like a bucket, but Russian. Oh!
Приходила же смс, типа атака БПЛА.
Это пиздец.
Some woman just said this is effed up.
Of an attack. They said the drone attack was coming, Bliat. It was coming on direction. Oh, that's effed up.
Dude, that was my response back in the day when I used to work at a place like Publix. If someone said something stupid, I'd just be like, that's effed up. And I'll just leave it at that, so the whole store's burning down.
Это то, чего я боялась, сука.
This woman's
That's what I was
commentary is
afraid
just
of, bitch.
awful. We made it home.
Матерись.
What the hell are they talking about? They're on a railroad. What are they talking about?
I think they're on that ketamine.
Bro, they're on that crocodile, man. Like they're absolutely tripping balls watching this railroad catch on fire. Meanwhile, we also got to hear outside of Voronezh and near to the area of Krasnodar Krai that the Russians were also crying down here as well, as it appears that a partisan group blew up and derailed a Russian military train traveling from Krasnodar Krai into occupied Crimea. So this is actually on the main line that is heading to the Kerch Bridge that this attack happened just tonight. And here's the clip. We see them here filming in the darkness. Looks like they're in the field of grain that was in the opening Gladiator movie. And here comes the Russian freight train. And... oh, and the bomb went off.
Oh.
And let's see. Actually, we didn't get to see if there was any derailment there or anything. They literally cut the video out right after the explosion. But from what we were able to understand, railroad attacks throughout the Russian Federation are now becoming a lot more destructive in ability, possibly suggesting that these partisans are now being supported with a greater deal of material equipment than they have been in the past. Generally, we used to see... back in the day, it's been such a common thing, we just completely stopped covering it about 2 years ago, that Russian partisans would go through Russia's railways, find the signal boxes, and let me go see if I can actually show y'all a signal box or what those kind of look like a little bit, because it's a little bit hard to explain what these are and what they do rather than just saying their name, and I think there is one. Yeah, there should be one right around here. So let me see if I can just drop down and show it to y'all. They generally are always beside a signal somewhere. So this is the old trusty Irondale yard, and actually it would be right here. Right out there, that is the signal cabinet. You've actually seen this thing before, Matthew. It's that little metal shed that's sitting in the middle of the railroad tracks. That is actually the box that is used to operate the signals, and I'll try and show y'all here where those signals are. That little box right there controls those signals right back there, and they also control some of the other signals around the periphery of the signal box. Although I do believe that these signals down here have their own separate signal box, these signal boxes are incredibly important to proper railroad operations. If a single signal post goes down like these, the entire railroad's operations could be significantly delayed, as ground operators will have to go out there, dispatchers or maintenance of way crews, and they will either have to manually operate the signal, or the railroad crews operating the actual locomotives will have to stop the trains, call dispatch, make sure that they are able to approve to pass the signal at danger, because if the signal's out, it's always assumed to be red, which means stop, meaning that you're passing it in a dangerous situation, and then they have to get the approval. This can greatly slow down railroad operations, but this has generally been the only kind of attack that we ever saw so far throughout the entirety of the Ukraine war, were attacks on those kinds of signal boxes. They are effective to a degree, but somewhat easier to repair, and not only that, do not cause extremely long-lasting damage. Apparently, recently, just within the past month, these partisans have started to get access to a greater amount of explosives, especially high-yield explosives, as we've been able to see the large amount of railway bridges and now main lines and also other critical infrastructure of the railroads are starting to get targeted and directly blown up with explosives, something that we have actually never seen before throughout the entirety of the war, and it's possibly suggesting that an outside force like the Ukrainian SBU is supplying these partisans with the explosives, or another third-party outside group, which we would not be able to know who it would be, is starting to supply these groups with the explosives. Beyond that, the fact that these partisan groups are now armed with bombs and they are flinging them around like party favors, this is going to be something that's going to start causing a lot more issues and problems for the Russians, especially if they keep on targeting and destroying all of these different kinds of railroad bridges and also mainline infrastructure. It is something that I believe we will start to see has a significant impact on Russian logistical efforts and abilities on the front line, considering that the Russian Federation's armed forces pretty much entirely subsist on railroad-based logistics throughout the entirety of the war, and still will, considering that a lot of their mechanized and motorized forces have taken a great deal of damage along with their motorized logistics forces on the road. Moving on from that, though, it is time for us to also tell y'all that there is an ongoing attack right now on Crimea, as we've been able to hear of an ongoing attack with Neptune cruise missiles, which are really more so anti-ship missiles, the same variety, as a matter of fact, that took out the Moskva at the very beginning of the war in the summer of 2022. We also were able to hear that apparently the Magura, which is apparently in this picture going through the Chocolate River found in the Willy Wonka movie, as well as Liudi long-range drones, are currently attacking Crimea at this point. We haven't been able to get any video or picture evidence of these attacks and the damage that they've been able to cause yet, but it does appear that they are currently attempting to strike and destroy more targets throughout the area of the Crimean Peninsula. Outside of that, though, it's time for us to get on to something that has been very controversial today, and something that we were not able to really figure out exactly what it was, and that's why it didn't make it into our title, although a lot of people still showed up tonight for the news. This is something that we were going to cover until Matthew and me both decided by talking it out, it's a little bit too questionable to actually run as a full-blown story. So we're going to present the information to y'all and then see what y'all are thinking about it. We were able to hear that within the North Kazakhstan region today, some sort of a item, some sort of a thing exploded in the upper atmosphere and started to burn quite prolifically. And we can see that right here. Once again, this is filmed by the railroads. I don't know what it is, Matthew, but recently, while I stopped trying to get out of the railroad segment, they're dragging me right back in. Like, they're literally making everything about the railroads now.
It's like the railroad mob or something. Once you join, you can't quite get out.
Man, they check in, but they don't check out. But anyways, we got to see the burning debris.
What's up with the dystopian dude on the radio?
Dude, he's sitting there saying, "Your train's on time, do not worry." It's like the train station, like, intercom. It's like, why is he sounding so panicked? But also, there's the debris flying right over the station. And
That's some pretty fast-moving debris, too.
It is really fast-moving. It appears to actually be not vertically flying upwards, or it's actually appearing to fly horizontally, parallel with the atmosphere for the large part.
You know, right at first glance, it kind of appears to be sort of reminiscent of maybe a satellite entering a decaying orbit and maybe burning up in the atmosphere. It kind of looks like that. But at the same time, though, there wasn't really anything scheduled to be doing that today, according to what I've read so far. So it's a little bit on the fence.
It is a little on the fence. We did get to see more footage of the burning debris over the atmosphere. We can see that this was apparently much later when the debris started to scatter over a wider field. We also got to see this footage again, and then we got to see this as well.
Летят, вот сейчас я иду, братья. Время сколько? 10 часов, еще на масс иду, летят такие дети.
You know what that really looks like?
What?
It looks like when SpaceX's rocket blew up and fell apart, that's what the debris looked like. That same type of field like that when it blew up over the ocean. It kind of has the same look, which makes me wonder if there is credence to the IRBM theory, because that would be a missile or a rocket of sorts breaking up and once again the debris flying everywhere, just like the SpaceX incident. So it kind of does match up a bit with the debris signature, at least in my opinion.
It does match up a bit, but the problem is, folks, is that we actually don't know what this was exactly. And I'm now going to get into the theories that we had once we let this video loop here. Now, there has been a theory that debris right there was actually the debris of a failed Oreshnik intermediate-range ballistic missile launch that happened by Russia today. The idea was that Russia launched a Oreshnik IRBM from inside of Russia towards Ukraine, but it ended up having a catastrophic failure somewhere over North Kazakhstan and then broke up in the upper atmosphere, which is what we're seeing, which is the debris either at the very at the very edge of the Kármán line or a little bit below it, pretty much burning up in the atmosphere as it broke apart. Some others are saying that it was apparently some sort of a satellite that was in a decay orbit and finally re-entered the atmosphere and broke up upon re-entry, but there is really not enough proof or evidence to say that either one is dead to rights and absolutely correct. We went through that as much as we could before we got on the stream tonight to try and figure out what that was, and our original plan was to actually say that Russia launched an Oreshnik IRBM and the launch failed, but considering that we didn't have enough proof to say that happened with certainty, and some people were saying that it was a satellite re-entering and others are saying that it was an IRBM exploding, we decided to go with the more well-researched news, which was the air-based attacks on Ryazan and Bryansk. Nevertheless, a lot of people have been throwing in their opinions tonight so far on the question of what that thing was. What is that thing? Was it a failed IRBM? Was it a satellite breaking up? Does it seem like a 50-50 chance that it could be either, or does it seem like a lot of people are unsure and undecided? And out of all of the decisions, this is actually the first time I've ever seen a quarter of people pick that they're unsure and undecided, but it still seems as though a lot of people actually are believing that it was a failed Oreshnik IRBM launch. But Matthew, what are people thinking about this, and what are you thinking about it as well?
All right, so it looks like the most amount of people, about 42% of the audience, said it appears to be an IRBM failing and either having a malfunction and exploding in flight, while about 21% said it seems like a 50-50 chance of a satellite breakup or an IRBM failure, while 13% said it was solely a satellite breaking up in orbit, and 24% said unsure. And the only thing here that we can really go on is kind of speculation and also try to piece bits and pieces of information together to try to figure out what's going on, because neither government has acknowledged the fact that this was an IRBM launch or not, so we really do not know. But I will say this, the debris signature, like I mentioned, it seems to match up with a missile or a rocket breaking up in flight and then falling to the ground again with a debris field. That's what it appears to be to me. If it was a satellite in a decaying orbit, it would seem to be one fireball, one singular dot of fire that would once again re-enter the atmosphere, break up, and then fall to the ground. This appears to be much larger than that in a much larger field, which indicates to me it probably is some type of missile. But to make the leap that it's an IRBM, that is a bit of a speculation leap, because once again, we know that Russia is planning on retaliating in a very big way against Ukraine for the recent attacks on their airfields, but we don't know if it's going to be an IRBM. It could be some other type of retaliation, and this might not have been it. So I'm leaning toward the IRBM theory, but at the same time, we can't really rule out the idea of a satellite because it could be. But I will say this, I did some preliminary research into that, and so far, there were no satellites scheduled to re-enter or basically decay in orbit today. There were no satellites scheduled for that, so that theory kind of falls a little short on that front, so that's why I'm a little bit on the fence. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say that I'm also on the fence as well and would have to go with the 24% that are unsure and undecided, because I'm not really sure which one it is. I don't know if it was an IRBM or a satellite breaking up. Some satellites do re-enter the atmosphere unscheduled and unplanned, but at the same time, though, it is the fact that this was apparently traveling east to west towards Ukraine, or at least the debris field was, which does lead credence to the idea it may have been an Oreshnik IRBM that was fired. The problem is that this broke up over the North Kazakhstan region, which is a specific area in Kazakhstan, which would put the debris somewhere over Petropavl. Now, if we were to take the Oreshnik missile and its publicly listed range, which I'll get right here, it has a range. Let's see here. Where in the world is its range? Well, it's an intermediate range ballistic missile. So let me see. This is the one that kind of straddles the area right between intermediate and intercontinental. So let me go see exactly what that range would look like. Oreshnik missile range. And it's about 1,550 to 1,860 miles. So let us say that this actually broke up somewhere in its mid-course. That's what it looked like from being launched in Russia. And let's say that it was targeted at a city like Kyiv. So that appears for it to have broken up over North Kazakhstan. That actually would be, from what we can tell, actually, wait a minute. Maybe. Actually, if they were firing at its absolute farthest range, it is possible that it could have been an Oreshnik IRBM, but it still seems that that's a bit of a stretch. The Russian Federation, the last time they fired an Oreshnik IRBM, fired it from the Kasputin Yar launch site, which means that from endpoint to endpoint on that targeting and launch, that missile only traveled about 510 miles, practically in a straight line. It didn't even have to factor in the curvature of the Earth or the Mercator projection into that to make sure that we were able to get the trajectory right, quite literally a straight line. So I would have to say that I'm a little bit doubtful that it was an IRBM, but at the same time, it also seems a little bit odd to say that it was a satellite, because at the same time, it also appears to be a large debris field. When satellites break up, re-entering the atmosphere, they do break into pieces and do create a larger debris field just because of the raw sheer pressure and force of re-entering the atmosphere, and also the speed and heat involved. It rips apart craft pretty easily, but at the same time, the debris field was massive. But also at the same time, an Oreshnik doesn't really appear to be able to easily reach that far, and if it was fired from anywhere, it would have been fired from Omsk. And the last time we heard of any launch that was going to be attempted, it appeared that they were going to be using an RS-28 Yars, and it was going to be fired from Yekaterinburg. Still, a good ways closer to the state of Ukraine than firing a missile like an IRBM from the city of Omsk. So I'd have to say I'm in the unsure and undecided category. I'm not really sure what it was, but still, we were very close to running that as an actual story, that it was an Oreshnik IRBM failure. We don't really know for certain, though. But with that,
If I guess you could say if it was an IRBM that was launched and somehow they launched it from a new launch site, or it was just, I guess, launched from a different area, we're not really sure if it was or not. But if it was an IRBM and this one failed once again, that means that system has a very, very bad track record, because so far we heard of the last allegation of one exploding. We never got confirmation on it, but Ukraine claimed that one exploded about a few days back or maybe a week ago. And if this was another one they tried to launch, and that means that's a very bad failure rate. That means they're failing all the time. But without knowing enough evidence, it's hard to say. So I wish we really had corroborating evidence for that, because if we could establish that was indeed an IRBM, then the Oreshnik threat has been nullified quite a bit if that was confirmed to be one, because you can't fail that much on a system and expect it to be reliable. It's just not.
yeah, I mean, the failure rates are insane these days. Honestly, man, the Russians have such a high failure rate, it really brings into question or the efficacy of any of their modern weaponry, because it seems like the failure rate is usually so high that you can pretty much shoot good odds that anything that they launch will most likely fail if it's been produced since the end of the Soviet Union in 1991. It's a wild thing, honestly. We have seen that the Sarmat has had an 80% failure rate on all of its test launches so far. We have seen that the Oreshnik may have a 66% failure rate at this point, if this ended up being true today, that was an Oreshnik that failed its launch. We have seen that the RS-28 Yars has had a 100% failure rate, because the only supposed launch they conducted of that system at Yekaterinburg apparently failed. It appears that really every single weapon that Russia has in the modern day either does not live up to what's on the 10, or it's just an absolute failure and does not operate at all. Either way, the Russians are starting to look more and more like a joke.
Yeah, it seems like Russia is really lacking really good minds to actually work on their rockets, because remember a while back there was a report that Russia needed the Ukrainian rocket scientists to be able to work on the maintenance of their ICBM systems they need to have for nuclear defense, because they're not maintaining them properly. They don't have the right knowledge nor the expertise to do it. And Ukraine was the quote unquote brains of the Soviet Union. So Ukraine took all those people with them when they separated into a separate country, and now Russia doesn't have access to them. And also the IRBM seem to be failing quite a bit. The YAR system's having problems. It indicates they really don't have the proper minds to develop good systems or even maintain the systems they've had for a long time, which, that's obviously a pretty big threat, because their nuclear triad can't be very efficient without their ICBMs and IRBMs working properly. So that's a huge dent in their defense.
You know what's even more interesting? That you're really hitting it dead on the nail, because there was an interesting video that came out today from Russia. This is a Russian military storeroom right here that's housing gas cans, or as we would call them here in the West, jerry cans. Y'all all know them. We've seen them many times, and it looks like this is a well-made storage room, folks, doesn't it? You got all the nice wooden pallets on the floor. You've got the storage cans, or the jerry cans, right over there, stacked up neatly. They're all painted fresh army green. But here's what's interesting about this. This is kind of the reality of everything in Russia. It looks good at face value, quite literally looking at the face of the pile. It looks good at face value. But let's go look at the side. While this guy steps over a paint can. You can see that they're all actually old cans, and all they did was smack some paint, some fresh green paint on the front of all of them. But once you get around to the side, all of the cans are mismatched, different colors, and some of them are probably as old as the Soviet Union itself. It's actually crazy to see that even on a small level, not speaking of IRBMs or ICBMs, we're speaking of literal fuel cans, that everything seems to be a complete illusion or a front by the Russians. Literally every single thing. Look at this right here. This picture here So totally different picture than the one that we're getting from the side. I mean, look at that. They literally went and confiscated these gas cans out of Babushka's backyard and then brought them here into the storage unit to put them in.
That's just crazy. And this is something simple to produce. This isn't like complicated. This is just metal stamped together and welded.
Yeah, absolutely easy to produce, and it's very easy to just go paint them all and get them in a standardized color. But the reality is that they do not even have the money to do that. And if they don't have the money to get some good gas cans or jerry cans that are even in a unified paint job, or do them all in a unified paint job, really, the big question here is, folks, how many of their IRBMs and ICBMs could actually be working? I think it actually had to be quite a small amount, because they don't even have the money for this. They don't have the money for much of anything. And that guy just agreed with me right there. I literally clicked play and he went, and I was like, hey, there we go. I like to hear it. But anyways, moving on from that, I do also have to say, folks, really quickly, I've seen some people throwing this in as a genuine question today, and some people said, hey, what about that SpaceX satellite that was falling out of orbit? Maybe that was the one that was over in North Kazakhstan. I mean, maybe so. I mean, all of the U.S. Government contracts with SpaceX were just canceled, so they might be taking some of them out of orbit to save on costs. Also, considering that Tesla's going down the drains at the moment as well. You know, they might be trying to, save the company a little bit. Anyways.
So, by the way, they haven't canceled his contracts yet. It's a threat being, I think, loomed out there, but the contracts haven't been canceled just yet.
Oh, well, SpaceX went and unilaterally canceled their contracts with the U.S. government, I believe, today, if I'm correct. Am I right on that?
He backed off of that, too. He backed off of it.
Oh, so everyone's backing off of everything now.
Yep, pretty well, not everything. He's just backing off of that. I think SpaceX shareholders might have called up the main fella and said, hey, you're about to tank our company. You might want to back off of that. And I think he said, okay, we're not going to decommission Dragon. Like, we're going to keep that going and keep the government affiliation alive.
Man, I got to tell you, folks, I got to tell you something. Whenever things like that happen, it's an interesting time, that's for sure. Moving on from that, though, we're going to just leave that at that. Y'all have all seen that today. It's been a big thing, and it's a very political thing, so we're not going to cover it. But don't y'all, every once in a while, don't y'all just dissociate and sit back and just have a little bit of a laugh at, like, the silliness of it all? Because I know I certainly did that today. I just kind of was like, let me just dissociate from being a U.S. citizen for a moment, and let me just watch this. And I was just getting an absolute laugh from it. It was a very sad, but also kind of a hilarious thing at the same time. That's just the state of the U.S. government at this point, and we just kind of have been seeing that going on for, I'd say, at least 12 years at this point, and it has no end in sight. Anyways,
it made me want to have a drink. Honestly, it didn't make me laugh. It made me horrified.
Bro, honestly, it made me sad. It made me sad. I was like, dang, it's like, don't y'all wish for the old days? Like, don't y'all wish for the old days? Like, I'm not even trying to be political here, folks, and I was hardly alive to remember this time, but don't y'all wish for the old days of folks like Bush and Obama, where, like, there was, like, little political scandals going on, but it didn't seem like literally everyone running the country was, like, from the Kardashians reality TV show or something like that? Don't y'all wish for days like that? Because recently, it just seemed like that's been endless for about 10 years now, and I gotta tell y'all, I'm just absolutely tired of it. I wish we would get back to boring government officials and presidents that just did the job that they were elected to do, and they weren't really into the drama and all the silliness. That's just my 2 cents on that, though. But anyways, moving on from that and on into the rest of the news that we have for the night, because we still have a decent amount. That's going to be moving us down into the Middle East, because we've got a lot of great news down here in the Middle East. It's a very interesting little thing that's happened today, because war has once again returned to the region, and the Israelis are now bombing Hezbollah throughout the entirety of the Middle East and making sure to give it to them nice and good. But before we do that, though, I want to make sure that we cover one last thing before we get on into the Middle East. And a lot of people have been saying, is Russia lacking proper expertise to build and maintain ICBMs and IRBMs for their nuclear deterrence? And it seems as though it's almost unanimous. Everyone's saying, yes, Russia is lacking good minds. Others are saying, no, Russia is just testing new system. Some people are saying, it's somewhat but manageable. And others are unsure and undecided. But Matthew, what are people thinking about this? And what are you thinking about it as well?
All right, so 76% of the audience said yes, Russia is lacking good minds to build and maintain these nuclear defensive systems, while 6% said Russia is simply testing a new system. The Oreshnik's new, and you got to give them a little bit of slack, I guess you could say. While 9% said somewhat, but it's manageable for Russia. They can still operate their nuclear defense. And I will say that generally speaking, it appears that they really can't develop any new systems with any efficiency behind it or efficacy. So that tells us that they probably can't maintain the systems either. And also considering the fact that they have to put a major portion of their budget in Russia toward fighting the war in Ukraine, I would imagine that nuclear defense, while it is still important, they don't really want to put too much money toward it because they need to put it toward bullets and frontline equipment so the soldiers can keep fighting in the meat grinder situation. So I really doubt they're maintaining their ICBMs properly. And once again, the Russians are not known for competence when it comes to maintaining systems. Usually their systems are pretty foul and they're pretty rusty and they're not being in top-notch shape. So I would say they are lacking good minds. They really can't build the aggression nor make it work properly. And they can't make really any new system work properly. So I would say they're in pretty foul shape. I'm with the majority. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that I would have to say that it's just bad. I mean, it's freaking terrible. Also, a huge thanks to I don't know what I'm doing. Like, it's a huge shout out to you for the $300 super chat. That's huge right there. And so a huge thanks to you for that. We'll be getting to that here in a second, actually. But beyond that, I would have to say that Russia is most likely lacking good minds. We know that the Russians are at least intellectually drained for the large part and exhausted at this point. And I don't really think that there's a lot that will be helping them to get those people back. They never really had them. That's kind of the truth of it, is that they never actually had them throughout most of Soviet and even modern Russian history. So they're just kind of ideologically and technologically held back by the limitations of their own nation for the large part. So with that, I hope that does address that well. I'd have to agree with a large majority on that. And with that, it is time for us to move on into the rest of our news, starting off in the Middle East. But before we get to that, though, I do want to make sure that we address a couple of questions tonight. But before we get to that as well, I also got to point out a huge thanks and a shout out to the 12.7 thousand people who were here at the peak of the stream tonight while we were live. It's absolutely shocking and incredible to think that so many people have joined us tonight. And really quickly, I want to actually check this because I don't mean to give this grandstand speech every single night, but lately it seemed like it was a little important to point out and thank folks for their time and their dedication that folks have had to this channel. So really quickly, let me go check something because we should have the new ratings for yesterday, and I think that we were somewhere. Interesting. So we actually were in nearly the top 50 yesterday in the ratings in the United States for top live streams in America that were running yesterday. I got to thank all of y'all so much for continuing to watch. We had a massive viewership again tonight of 12.6 thousand people to the peak, and we were absolutely honored and appreciative to have y'all spend so much of y'all's time here every day listening to all of the major news that's going on around the world. Y'all are amazing, folks. I cannot ask for y'all to give anything more than the hours of time that y'all give to this channel every day, and I hope that all the folks who have just joined us here tonight, which I'm assuming that a lot of y'all have to be new, are enjoying the stream tonight. If you've been enjoying it, please make sure to subscribe. We would love to have y'all here. The Lee Spring Army, which is the community of this channel, also called the LSA, and you'll see it in the chat spelled LSA quite often, is a very large and incredible community. It's united around supporting American and Western interests, and if you find that to generally be a core sentiment or belief of yours, then you're very much welcome here. We don't really get into the whole politics thing. I know some people take some of our statements as political, but we always make sure they're neutral. Like our last statement on stream, you'll notice that when I say don't you wish for the old days when things were simpler, I brought up both a Republican and a Democrat at the same time in a positive light, and if we bring them up in a negative light, they're brought up in a negative light equally to make sure that we stay as neutral as we possibly can. I hope that y'all do join us, though, because we cover this news like this every single day, 6 days a week, and not only that, we also make short war videos whenever there's enough news in the middle of the day, which are about 20 to 30 minute long videos that cover all of the major happenings of the day in a much shorter form if you can't really be around for the entirety of the stream. Beyond that, I gotta just say, we're once again honored to have so many of y'all here with us tonight, and I hope y'all have all been enjoying it so far. But with that in mind, it is time for us to get on into the questions themselves, before we segue ourselves on into the Middle East and the actual Ukrainian frontline news. So Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so jumping right into our super chat segment here, our first one is a massive $299 donation, the largest
Dang!
super chat of the night from I don't know what I'm doing, but they did know what they were doing and they threw in a massive support. And thank you very much for supporting the channel in a big way, and we do appreciate that very much. And they said, starting out with a bang, and I've been watching for about 2 years now, and this is my first time donating. And although I don't get to watch the live stream as much due to work, I appreciate the work y'all do to provide us accurate and reliable news. And hopefully with this promotion, I can watch y'all more often live in LSA.
Hey, and a huge thanks to you. I don't know what I'm doing for supporting this channel and helping it to keep on running, because I'd have to agree, sometimes I don't know what I'm doing. Honestly, off air, sometimes we don't know what we're doing. We don't really get a lot of time free from the show or really working. So whenever we're free, we're like, what the hell do we do? And so that's a big question I ask myself off air. But beyond that, I got to say thank you so much for watching the channel for over 2 years. I've seen you, I think, maybe a few times in the live chat before, but not a lot, actually. But I got to thank you for throwing in an unbelievably massive amount of support. That is huge, and once again, like we always say to everyone every night, it's folks like you, especially you tonight, that's just unbelievably massive support that help this channel to keep running. We run this thing as our job. This is our full-time job every single day of the week for every single year that we've been doing this so far, which is about 3.5 years. Folks like you have helped us to be able to keep our lights on, keep food in our bellies, and to pay the bills every single month. And folks like you are really the entire reason why this channel is able to keep running and keep being possible. It's folks like you who have made it possible for you to watch this channel for 2 years. And I got to thank you incredibly for that unbelievably massive support tonight. And I got to thank you for appreciating the work we do. We put a lot of pride and effort into this thing every single night. It's made us the ire of some, admired by others. But we're always happy to know that the folks here on this channel, here on the Enforcer community and in the LSA, continue to enjoy this channel through and through every single day. I got to thank you massively for that huge support and the massive thanks, because it means a great deal to us, and it really will help this channel to keep on running. And like I was saying last night, I kind of said this towards the end after Matthew got off, it's a huge thing to Matthew and me that people enjoy this channel so much. We haven't really talked about this a lot in the past, but Matthew and me didn't really have the it didn't really go down the path of roses growing up. It usually was a path of thorns, and we always were generally treated like we didn't ever know what we were talking about, and we were never going to go anywhere in life. So it's a very wonderful and amazing thing to know that we've been able to grow such an amazing and incredible community of people here on this specific channel. And not only that, a lot of y'all really respect the kind of news coverage, data, analysis, and information that we put out every single day. I hope, and I was saying this last night, it seems a little bit weird to say this, but I hope y'all never have to understand how much that really means to the both of us, because to be in that kind of a situation where you really would understand what it means to both of us, you probably went through some things that weren't really the greatest. But nevertheless, I got to thank you massively for the support and helping this channel to keep on rolling, because it is folks like you who have helped to make this thing possible and will continue to make it possible for us well on into the future. And so a huge thanks to you so much once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And I second that, what you said, by the way. And with that, we are now moving on to our next super chat here. And this one is also a massive donation. This one is from Lord Cog, who's also a longtime channel legend. And he throws in a $250 donation. And thank you very much, Lord Cog, as well, for that support. And they said, as always, thank you for what you do.
Hey, and thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, Lord Cog, like I was just saying, I don't know what I'm doing, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible. Thank you so much for the huge support as well. I'm thanking us for doing what we're doing. It's an incredible and amazing thing to know that folks enjoy this channel every single day. We put our heart and souls into this thing, and we have long discussions off air on pretty much every single major news topic that's going to be coming up. Today, actually, we were in a call while I was working on getting the news together for about 10 or 15 minutes on whether we should run a main headline about the IRBM failure or not, and whether that was hard enough news, hardcore enough news with the factuality to be able to cover that or not. We put our heart and soul into this thing, and we pretty much, I know Matthew passively is working pretty much all day, every day to make sure that we have the news squared away on Twitter.
All
And
the time,
yeah,
all the
all
time.
the
I tell you
time.
what, it's a 24/7 thing for me.
Yeah, it's a 24/7 thing for him. He's always passively working, getting onto Twitter and checking everything out. I don't do that as much. My work segment is more so it's longer in actual hard set hours, and it's a lot more intense during that time. But we both work pretty much equally the same amount here on the channel to make sure that we make this news possible. And folks like you, Lord Cog, and not only that, folks who aren't like you, folks who are just in the chat right now, who just enjoy this channel and watch it every night, even without supporting, y'all make this entire thing worthwhile. It just blows us. I cannot say this enough again, folks. It blows us away that tonight, once again, we had 12.6 thousand people here at the peak watching us all at one time live. It's unbelievable to think that so many people continue to find this channel to be their primary source of news. And not only that, it's one of the biggest news channels on YouTube in the United States, according to the ratings every single night for doing that. We got to thank you so much once again for that, Lord Cog, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to keep this channel running, and we would have never been able to make it possible without amazing folks in the Leaf Spring Army like you and everyone else who calls themselves a member of the LSA. And so with that, I hope that does address it incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the final question of the segment, and then we're going to be moving on into the middle of the East and also the Ukrainian frontline news. So what do we got, Matthew, for our final question of this segment?
All right. So our final one in the segment goes to Ron Anderson, and he threw in a $50 donation.
Hey!
And thank you very much, Ron, for that generous support as well, and also helping to fund the channel and to keep the work rolling. And he said, I thought I should support the channel coffee fund again, and I appreciate the time you put into the streams, you two, including the side quest, and take a question from the chat, and long live the LSA.
And long live the Leaf Spring Army. And I got to thank you massively for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And also, I got to say, that I thank you greatly, Ron Anderson, for appreciating the side quest, or as we call them here on the channel, the rabbit holes. The rabbit holes are always just random, and usually I find them incredibly interesting because it's a topic I like. Or honestly, Matthew can bring up a topic I'll get engaged in as well, like cars and motorcycles. I generally am one to find most things interesting. And Matthew also finds most things interesting, except for trains. Trains just kills Matthew, but everything else,
I don't know why. I don't know why. The trains, for some reason, the trains are like, they grate my nerve for some reason. Not anything to like offend you, but like personally or anything like that. It's just that topic for whatever reason. I don't know if maybe it's because I associate trains with something bad or what. It might have been that train ride we took actually on the Amtrak that sort of turned me off of the trains permanently. I think that actually might have been it, because I don't know why, but I can't listen to trains for too long. It makes me want to run.
Man, I don't know why, man, because you had to find time on the Bright Line. Like that wasn't that bad, really.
Not too bad, but I felt paranoid on the Bright Line for some reason. That Amtrak trip messed me up with the trains. That was a tough one.
Dude, honestly, man, we're going to have to eventually put you back on one for a shorter period of time, not like a whole 2 days, but like a shorter period of time, and just kind of like wean you back into liking trains, because it wasn't that bad, man. And also, honestly, like I think the ticket attendant who got all of our cabs in the same coach, but he also put us in the transition car, which was the only car on the whole train that hadn't just been re-upholstered. So we got like the 25-year-old railroad car that we were in that hadn't been refurbished yet, while literally every other train, a car on the train had been refurbished, which was a damn shame, dude, because if you had been in the refurbished car, I think your trip would have been a lot better, at least.
Man, they had me wanting to transition right outside the train door, honestly. I was wanting to get the hell up out of there, to be honest. I was sick of that.
Bro, he was about to pop out at damn Eugene in Oregon and go, Eugene! And then, like, just walk away for good. He was gonna leave. Man, honestly, dude, I'd like, if y'all had seen Matthew on that trip, man, he woke up the next day after trying to sleep on the train. I woke up, and I was like Sleeping Beauty. I got up, opened up the blind in the railroad car, and I was looking at Mount Shasta in Northern California as the sun was rising. I was like, wow, this is so cool. And then I saw Matthew, and he was pale as a ghost. Like his mouth was open. He was like almost like drooling because he was salivating in the mouth so badly because he was about to throw up. He was just dog sick.
Man, and I was roaming the halls of that car like a man with a foot in the grave, and like honestly, I was in foul shape on that train. That really messed me up. And what really messed me up was when you went to sleep on that thing, because we had like the little roomette car or whatever. You'd go to sleep on these bunks, which there was nothing wrong with the bunks. They were like perfectly fine to sleep on, but I wanted to sleep on the bunk. I woke up like an hour later. I thought I'd been sleeping for 8 hours. And you know, when you get that feeling, something is bad wrong, you usually wake up sick. That's usually what happens. And I woke up and I was like, uh-oh, this is not good. Sweating, all kinds of stuff. The train was just a bad experience, and you couldn't get off the damn thing. I was stuck on it all the way up to Seattle from Los Angeles. I was like, this is like hell on earth. I'm trapped on the train. I'm sick on the train, and it's killing me right now. So I was like, I was just done with it. I'm not sure if it was motion sickness or what it was. I typically don't get motion sick about anything. Like I've been on cruise ships and really, really strong waves. I've been in all kinds of scenarios for motion, even in airplanes, no problem at all. Cessnas, big planes. I think it might have been maybe I caught something on the train because it was very close, not very clean, to be honest. I think I might have caught something.
Man, honestly, man, I think you did catch something because you were like sick afterwards as well. It wasn't like you were like sick and then you got off the train, you got better. You were still sick well into the next day and a little bit the day after. I don't think that was a train thing. I think you just got sick. And because you were on the train, I think the motion, like the slight rocking of the car here and there, made it worse. And then it made it feel like it was the train. Because folks, like on my train trip, which was the same one as Matthew's, it was like literally something out of the old days. Like it was literally what I envisioned a train trip to be. Like exactly. Like literally. Like I went to sleep. Like it was almost getting sundown when we were entering San Jose, California on the train, and I went to sleep, and we went all the way around the San Francisco Bay and then out to Sacramento, and then by that point, going through San Jose, I'd already fallen asleep, and when I woke up the next day, it was literally sunrise at like 6 in the morning. I opened up the blinds, and the train was literally right at the base, somewhere around Upton, of Mount Shasta, and I got to see the whole thing as the sun was rising over it. I was just like, this is the coolest thing ever. Like, I absolutely love this. But beyond that, still, it was a fun trip. One day we'll have to do it again, though, because that's the one thing that Matthew doesn't like talking about, and I think it's because he got sick on the train. But beyond that, I hope that does address that somewhat well, at least the best I can, Ron Anderson, about our rabbit holes. That's the only one that is a bit of a touchy one here on the channel, is the train one. But beyond that, we will make sure to take a question from the chat in your honor, Ron Anderson. Of course, long live the LSA, and the LSA will never truly die. And so with that, what do we got for a live chat, Matthew?
All right, and this live chat question right here goes to Miss Disa, who says, what's up with the Kerch Bridge, and is there any new news about that situation?
Right now, in the moment, we haven't heard any new news about the Kerch Bridge. It appears that the explosion has ended up being something of a nothing burger, at least as far as news coverage has gone on our end. So, with that, I hope that does address that live chat well. Big thanks to Ron Anderson once again for supporting this channel and helping to keep on running. And with that, it's time for us to get on into the rest of the news. And moving us on down into the area of Israel, we have been able to hear that the Israeli armed forces are now conducting new airstrikes against Lebanon. I do not discriminate anymore against Lebanon and Hezbollah and treat them as separate organizations. Hezbollah actually is officially represented in the Lebanese government, and for this reason, we largely deem the entirety of the state of Lebanon on this channel to be a terrorist state. Nevertheless, we were able to hear that Israel's military has conducted strikes on Hezbollah targets in Lebanon, and we were able to see that a large amount of civilians were attempting to evacuate or leave the area of Dahia as the airstrikes were coming up. We can also hear some sort of mystery music playing over that. I don't know why, but we can see them all trying to leave Dahia.
That's a lot of people trying to get out. I would hate to live in Beirut because it seems like it's just, honestly, like I'm sure there's nice people that live in Beirut, like anywhere, but it seems like a hellhole because they're constantly getting attacked. There's literally terrorists roaming around the place, and they got the terrorists being represented in the government. It just seems like a bad place to be.
And if they're not those kind of people, then they're wearing rollies and they're pretending to like you, and they don't. Like that's another kind of people who would be in Beirut or Lebanon for the large part. But nevertheless, we also get to see the airstrikes being conducted inside of Dahia within the southern area of the city of Beirut. Oh. Looks like they're getting slammed a little.
Pretty precise.
The Israelis don't play. Oh. Sounds like someone dropped the bottle. I guess you could say that Israeli airstrikes are the #1 way that Lebanese citizens get on the wagon. They don't fall off the wagon anymore. They drop the bottle and get sober.
Man, sounds like some of that fine china. No mouth.
Bro, they got the cheap Russian air raid siren, bro. It's like 9 octaves up. Do you hear that? It's like the same one.
It kind of sounds like it, yeah.
Listen.
Oh,
it's got the slide whistle thing, dude, and everything.
It really sounds just like it. You're right. They got the phaser. They got everything.
Man, and we also get to see the burning fire and debris here as well. Take a gander at that. It appears the Israelis are putting in the work in the hours and taking what's theirs. We also got to see that the I forgot what the name of the aircraft, El Al aircraft, are currently holding off of the way of Israel. They are currently conducting an orbit as the airstrikes are ongoing, just in case there were any retaliatory strikes during that very moment in time. Moving on out of that, we also got to hear the Islamic Republic of Iran has now ordered hundreds of parts for ballistic missiles from the People's Republic of China, according to the Wall Street Journal. It appears the Iranians are getting a little feisty. They're getting a little antsy, ants in their pants, I suppose. And that's not a great thing for them to have, because it appears that the U.S. is getting ready to maybe put one on them, but we'll never know. That might be 180 tomorrow. Moving on out of that, though, and finally back into Ukraine to cover all the news that we have there, we were able to hear that before we move into that, we have a question for all of y'all. Israel launched strikes in Beirut, Lebanon today, striking Hezbollah sites, and many are wondering, will it cause escalation? And many have said yes, there will be more escalators. Others are saying that the attacks will go unanswered. Others are saying that there's a 50-50 chance, and some are unsure and undecided. But Matthew, let me ask you this. Are we going to have the third war in the Middle East before we get GTA 6 or nah?
So it looks like 52% of the audience said yes, it will cause a flare-up once again in the Middle East between Israel and all the proxy forces, while 25% said no, the attack will go unanswered by the proxies in Iran, and 17% said it's a 50-50 chance of causing a major escalation. And it is this is the first pretty large attack in Beirut that we've seen in a minute. So this is something unusual. It has happened just today, and it did catch our attention for that reason. So I think with the fact this is striking specifically Hezbollah and is striking one of the main proxy groups that Iran is funding that's in Lebanon, and also allegedly, according to what Israel was saying, Hezbollah had just gotten a brand new shipment of stuff from Iran, and they were hiding it inside of Beirut in these safe sites that were struck today with the missiles. So I would say this will probably cause an escalation because Iran is directly involved in it, Hezbollah is involved with it, and Lebanon is also involved with it as well. So all three are coming back together, and it seems like the gang is back together, and it sounds like Israel's going to bust the gang up yet again. So it probably will cause some retaliation. And of course, the Yemeni Houthis, they've never stopped. They're still launching missiles at Israel. That's the main force attacking Israel right now. But I think this is going to cause Hezbollah to also rise back up as well and get back to it. So I'm with the 52%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to say that, in my opinion, I'm with the 52% as well. I think it's going to be flaring up like a bad case of arthritis. It appears that they are going to be getting a little bit angry with the Israelis because the Israelis are attacking one of their golden boy terrorist forces that they fund and support. So the Iranians will probably start to decide to strike at the Israelis. And this means this will give the Israelis the proper casus belli necessary to be able to strike and destroy Iran's nuclear sites. So it may be a well-timed and well-planned diplomatic maneuver to give them the proper justification to be able to destroy Iran's nuclear research and development sites without it looking like it's an open attack of their own, and giving them a lot more diplomatic justification to do so. That would be my opinion on it at the moment. But moving on from that and into Ukraine, we did get to hear that unfortunately the city of Kyiv is under a significant air attack at the moment, and it does appear that different areas of the city have been hit quite heavily by the Russian attack. Meanwhile, we also were able to see that missile attacks were still ongoing just a few hours ago, as Russian ballistic missiles were continuing to hit several cities, and several cities were continuing their air defense operations. Meanwhile, outside of that, we were able to hear that the Ukrainian armed forces struck and destroyed an Iskander launcher earlier in the day before the attacks occurred, and we were able to see that Iskander launcher getting hit right there in the trees and catching on fire and exploding as a result of the hit.
A very bad system, it looks like.
Man, I guess you could say that thing is skanda. But anyways, moving on from that and into our next clip further on down, we also got to hear, oh no, terrible tribulations for the Russian army. We got to see that they got hit with a bomb today in the area of eastern Tetkino. Take a look. There goes half the building.
Was that the HQ?
I don't know if it was the HQ, but it was hit by an AASM 250 hammer.
It said Russian military HQ, so I would assume it would be. It looked like an HQ, kind of had that look to it.
Oh, I didn't actually catch that part at the beginning. Yeah, it looks like it may have been an HQ, but it's no longer an HQ. It was an HQ. And we also got to hear at the same time, apparently the Russians are trapped. Well, things are not looking so good for the Russians in Tetkino. Russian authorities tried shutting down this admin and began threatening family members of the remaining 56 airborne members surrounded by the AAFU there. Oh my god, how do you know this, Bliad? You're the Russian army. We have to know. But beyond that, we were able to hear that the Russian military bloggers are panicking. They're freaking out. You can make mistakes, but you can't lie. It's a phrase from our Minister of Defense that has long since become meme. In today's situation with Tetkino, there are mistakes and now lies. Man, they're acting like the Russian Federation lying to them is like a shock. Despite the obvious facts, despite the piles of photos and videos of objective control, the reaction is completely inadequate. We insist the guys are practically surrounded, and we needed to take decisive action. And they were taken. In the chat of relatives of the 56th Airborne Regiment, they call the admin threatened. Close the chat for communication. And then they called the relatives of the fighters, again, threats with the wish to shut their mouths until they closed it forever. The fighters who runs his small but lively channel, what was called the TS Ip Shoshnik, and in general, they threw out a version in Telegram that everything is effing great in Tetkino. No one needs to worry about anything. Anatoly Radov compared the situation in Tetkino with what happened at the aggregate plant in Volchansk. If this is not an operational encirclement, then what is it? We wish the fighters fortitude, their relatives fortitude. That in Russian means more liquor. The command, hang themselves. Truth will win anyway. It looks like the Russian military...
twist. Plot twist. Truth's not going to win, and also the soldiers aren't going to win either. Everybody loses.
Bro, that last line right there, hang themselves, those Russian commanders are like, hey, no, you. And then this guy's going to end up on a little bit of a falling out of a window list. But it appears that the Russians in Tetkino are now encircled as of today. So, hey, that's pretty good. You know, the Ukrainians couldn't do any better than that. Meanwhile, we also got to see just a little while away, the Ukrainians were conducting firefights against the Russians in the Sumy area. They were also playing those pop beats. We all know that they love the pop beats. We can see him whipping out the RPG. He's about to hit the Russians. Aw, man, how did you know? Well, we're the enforcers. We have to know.
Is this some type of like Nods Mountain or something we're staring at?
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
I was wondering what that was. Look at these people. They're dropping little bits of rocketry, some ST's rocket motors and stuff. Look at that.
Man, they just wandering around. They getting busy. And we see them laying down.
You got the M4, it looks like maybe. They've got the M4s. They were using those really, really heavy now. It's like they're really not liking the AKs anymore. They want they want ARs. Which kind of proves the old debate. We said, which one's better, the AR or the AK? It looks like Ukraine, which is fighting the war, is answering that question.
Man, once you get a hold of those higher tolerance AR platforms that actually do not allow muck inside of the gun to even worry about that being an issue, you just can't go back. It's just a better rifle.
Yeah, and also you get to put all the accessories on it, which it looks like they're like modding the hell out of these M4s right here. They've got all kinds of stuff on them. And you can't do that with an AK, really. It's too difficult.
You can do it with an AK, it's just that it's not easy, and also mounting any kind of optics, you can just wish luck on that, because putting an optic on a dust cover and hoping that it holds a 0 is just absolutely insane. Like, it just will never hold a 0. But anyways, that's the end of that clip right there, and we also got to hear, along with that video, that the front has been stabilized. The situation of the Kursk-Sumy front line is that the Russians have gained a few villages north of Sumy without breaking through the front, meaning that the front's now been stabilized effective today. Ukrainians, on the other hand, keep pressure on Tetkino west of it. According to Russian channels, the Russian units in this town are virtually encircled, and it does appear that things are going incredibly well. Moving on from that, and on into some more news that we also got to see in the Kursk Oblast, we got to see that the 225th Separate Assault Regiment was continuing to attack and destroy Russian drones within that area, which we could see in this clip right here, as they point out where the Russian artillery piece was, and then they go through the process of targeting it and destroying it. And also, Smog did correctly say Ukraine produces its own local version of the M4, which is called the UAR-15, technically. But it operates the exact same way as an M4. It's also a carbine style of the AR platform, so it is an M4 by all measure.
Somebody in the chat, get this. Somebody said Zelenskyy has a low IQ because they're Russians. Excuse me. I'm sorry.
Zelenskyy and Shursky. That's not even the guy's name. It's Sersky. This guy can't even spell. Like,
And also, they're not Russian. They live in Ukraine. So that makes them Ukrainians.
bro, Zelenskyy be sitting there, listen, I might be busy, but that doesn't mean I'm Russian. Like, I'm just a Ukrainian, okay? A little bit of a busy Ukrainian. Dude, you know that would be funny, man, if the Ukrainians banned the word rushing for sounding like Russian in Ukrainian. So you just had to say, I'm a really busy Ukrainian, you know, or something like that instead. That'd be pretty funny.
Yeah,
But moving on.
I agree.
Good. This is good to hear.
Yeah.
But moving on from that, we got to see this picture of a Ukrainian T-72B3. And this guy holding a CZ Brin, it seems.
The CZ Brin, the scar lookalike. I like the CZ Brin with it looking like a scar. I don't know, like, who made theirs first? Was FN first to it, or was it them?
Jeez, man, that's a good question. I feel like FN would have been to it first, and then CZ kind of made their own version of it.
Interesting. The two-letter companies competing for the same design. That's pretty ironic.
Dude, I still like it, though, when I say effing Hurstel, because it sounds like I'm saying effing Hurstel. But moving on from that, hey, look, Elvis Presley's in the house.
Thank you, Elvis.
Hey!
Damn, like, he came back from the grave just to come into the stream and support it. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Like, I was about to do that too. Thank you. But anyways, thank you very much. But moving on from that, we also got to see Ukrainian Mi-24 taking him down. And let me get the audio on this clip. It actually is really cool audio. Oh man, got him with a burst. That was actually pretty cool sounding. Listen to that. Oh, sick. That windshield wiper was going 9 gazillion miles an hour. Look at that thing go. That thing would be on spasm mode. But anyways,
man, they try to keep that windshield clean. They don't want any obstructions.
Man, they say I got to have a clear line of sight on this hoe, and they got them. I mean, pretty impressive stuff right there. But also, by the way, if y'all are wondering, wow, was that like an A10, like with 30 millimeter gun? It's a 12.7. It's not at all the size of an A10s, and that apparently, based off of the gun, would be an Mi-24D, which usually was the variant that was made with the 12.7 or the Mi-24V. You can actually see the little rotary gun down there. It's a 12.7, not a 30 mil. But when you get those things up to a high enough RPM, they all kind of sound the same. It's just that the larger caliber they get, the lower in pitch they get as far as the sound goes. But anyways, moving on from that and all of those little semantics about the sound of the gun and what type it was and everything, we also got to see the Russian casualty report for the day. And no Bobcats.
Oh no, 0 Bobcats, not a single one. But that's okay though, because the other losses are quite crazy. But tell us more.
Oh man, I'm telling you, I get no respect around here. We make an entire skit about Bobcat skid steers. Oh man, and then they get rid of them. Oh man, I'm telling you. Oh man, I get no respect around here. And you know something else? Miss Disa. Oh man, Miss Disa, keeper of the records. Oh man, she gives me no respect either. Oh man, she tells me that the troop losses aren't that high. Oh man, she said another drop of troop losses below 1,000. Oh man, but the average still means 1 million in 6 days. Oh man, I'm telling you. And 4 MLRSs is nice and good numbers overall. Oh man, I'm telling you. And I gotta give a big shout out to Miss Disa. Oh man, for giving us the records here. Oh man, I'm telling you. If I didn't get the records, what would we have? We wouldn't have anything. Oh man, I'm telling you. But beyond that, we were able to hear that the casualty report was decent today. We were able to hear that 930 Russian soldiers were wounded and killed over the past 24 hours. We were also able to hear of 2 APCs being destroyed, along with 82 supply trucks, 3 main battle tanks, 39 artillery systems, 95 drones, 4 MLRSs, and 1 anti-aircraft warfare system. And like Miss Disa is saying, she is exactly correct. From what we were able to tell, they are still going to be reaching 1 million troops wounded and killed within about the next week. So it's a pretty good thing to hear, and it's great to see that the Russian Federation is still continuing to take considerable losses. Moving on from that, and out of that news, once again, big shout out to Miss Disa, keeper of the records, for actually getting us that daily report. We always are looking for it every single time we see it. And moving on from that, we also get to see in the Lehman direction, the Russians were getting hit by that Signum Mail Battalion. Apparently, they listened to Andrew Tate podcasts. I would highly dissuade you from listening to Andrew Tate podcasts. Not really the greatest.
What color is your guy?
What color is your prostitute ring? It's like it doesn't have one color. It's like because we don't have one. Man,
This is a terrible entrance to a bunker right here. Like,
yeah,
awful looking.
Yeah, you had to like kind of like slither into it like a lizard or something. Wait, was that Zuckerberg's hideout? Oh well. Anyways, That's the end of the clip right there. And what we really should be asking is, where's Elon's hideout going to be? Anyways, moving on from that and down to Pokrovsk, we also got to see some recent footage from the front in this area. You know, man, I always loved it. I just got to say this honestly, folks. I always loved it when those traditional podcasters that stood for traditional values would say that they greatly respected a Romanian pimp. I always found that to be well on brand by all those people that they would say something like that, you know? Because I always remember back in the day when I was growing up here in the traditional state of Alabama that there was always a pimp at the end of every block that was just pimping out all the women on the block like lot lizards or something. I always remembered that. Very traditional and upstanding sort of a moral value there.
Man, I'm telling you, it's tough.
Man.
Look at that, the pink house. They had literally a pink house on the side of the road right there.
Bro, that'd be like that pink drink.
Telling you.
You see them driving on through. And we see them passing on by. Of course, there's been a decent amount of devastation here. This is close to the Pokrovsk battlefield, actually. We see them continuing to drive on through. Oddly enough, this clip has no audio, not even the sound of a dubstep trap beat over the whole video. We now see him looking at the dashboard. We can now see them driving through. And it appears that the video is now looping, so we're going to be ending that one and moving further down the line and into the area of Kherson, where we were able to see the Ukrainian 1129th Anti-Aircraft Missile Regiment conducting anti-drone activities with their own drones. We call this a drone-on-drone interception.
Oh, look at that. It's a little target right there. This is the wannabe Baza.
Man, they about be getting that thing. And bada bing, bada zing, and they got it. Look at that. Wonderful. Incredible stuff. Moving on from that and out of that little bit of news, it's now time for us to move on down into the Dnipro River, where we also got to see the Ukrainians hitting a Russian boat.
Nice patch. I like that.
Man, he burnt my patch. And then they're about to get him. You remember that clip, Matthew? That guy, like, unloading on that kid's back with the airsoft gun at, like, the airsoft match. And everyone was like, dude, what the hell? And then the guy was like, he burnt my patch. I was like, I don't even know what the hell that means. It's like...
I don't either.
Like, yeah, it's like, I don't even understand what the hell that guy was getting at. Anyways, it is time for us now to move on northbound into the city of Kyiv to cover the speech from President Volodymyr Zelenskyy here on this very day of the war, and we are blessed for he made one, and this allows us to have a brief break for water and maybe a snack. So without further ado, here is the speech. Peach!
Дорогі українці, українки, сьогодні росіяни знову ударили по Херсону. Двічі за день. Вони зруйнували будівлю обласної адміністрації, ще одну цивільну будівлю. Вже не вперше вони атакують цю будівлю, але сьогодні саме показовий удар. Жодного військового сенсу. І все це, кожен такий удар зовсім не про так звані першопричини війни, про які в Москві люблять поговорити. Це про те, що вони хворіють війною, ненавистю, бажанням знищувати життя інших народів. Таких можна здолати лише силою. Силою дипломатії, силою санкцій, силою зброї і технологій. Російська армія руйнувала життя народів Кавказу. Знищували життя в Сирії. Вони пішли навіть в Африку, щоб там продавати свою жорстокість місцевим царькам. Росія гордиться цим, гордиться, що вміє вбивати. І, чесно кажучи, більше нічому ця держава нормально не навчилась. Удар по Прилукам Чернігівської області сьогодні. Російські дрони убили родину українського рятувальника. Його життя присвячене порятунку інших, а Росія так з ним і багатьма іншими людьми. Були удари по Харкову, по Сумщині, Донеччині, Нікополю, по громадах Запоріжжя, по селах Херсонщини. І це буденність того, що росіяни, на жаль, можуть собі дозволити. Світ, на жаль, дозволяє їм таке. Але ми бачимо, скільки людей в світі все ж таки з нами. Цими днями наша команда проводить зустрічі в Вашингтоні. Урядовці, військові, команда Офісу. Дякую за підтримку всім, хто був на брифінгах від української делегації. Зокрема, були зустрічі в Конгресі з представниками адміністрації США, спілкування з журналістами, з представниками громадських організацій. Є розуміння і підтримка. Дуже розраховуємо на сильні кроки. Це те, що зараз в дефіциті і що може примусити навіть таких покидьків в Москві відчути, що вони війну не потягнуть. Це треба забезпечити. І саме для цього потрібні нові, достатні санкції, передусім від Сполучених Штатів. Саме для цього потрібен чіткий політичний тиск заради результативної дипломатії. Вже просто немає у світі таких мирних ініціатив, які б Росія не відкинула. Їм все не подобається. Їм подобаються тільки руїни і вбивства. Вони повинні за це відповідати. І ще кілька речей. Була сьогодні доповідь прем'єр-міністра Дениса Шмигаля про його перемовини у Франції. Є рішення про додаткові кошти на відновлення в Україні. Дякую за це рішення нашим французьким партнерам. Також ми обговорили з прем'єр-міністром деякі рішення, які додадуть Україні стійкості. Була доповідь міністра закордонних справ України Андрія Сибіги. Ми готуємо рішення разом з країнами Сімки. Я дякую всім, хто з нами, хто з Україною. Слава Україні!
And with that, that is the end of the speech from President Volodymyr Zelenskyy here on this very day of the wire. And it's time for us to move on into the rest of the questions that we have for tonight. And boy, howdy, folks, do we have plenty. We got a lot of them. And I got to say, I'm absolutely kind of impressed, amazed even, that we have so many questions. And I also got to say that I'm absolutely amazed and impressed at how many people have been watching our stream. I got to say, I'm actually, honestly shocked again. We had a top viewership tonight, while I just hiccuped there on air, of 12.6 thousand people. That's freaking insane, honestly, really. I just don't even know how the hell that happens. But I gotta thank you all. I got to thank you all massively for being here and watching this tonight. There's still 9.4 thousand of you all here right now, and it's just an unbelievable thing to see that. Well, not only that, 80,000 people have watched this stream so far, and also another thing I got to say is a huge thanks to everyone for hitting the like button. We've already gotten up to 3,400 likes tonight, and not only that, we are soon to be breaking 361,000 subscribers, and it wasn't that long ago that we just hit 360. It's just crazy to see the kind of growth that we're witnessing these days on the channel. And it's a wonderful and incredible thing. And so with that, it's time for us to move on in those questions at large. Those questions at large. And Matthew, I understand that we have plenty of them. So what do we got, Matthew? What do we got?
All right, so jumping into our final segment of Super Chat questions, live chat questions, and Morse code decoders. We are fresh out of polls, so we're jumping right back into our Super Chat questions proper. And our first one here of the last segment goes to Elvis, who threw in that very generous $100 donation earlier. And thank you very much, Elvis, for supporting the channel and being a longtime channel viewer as well. I know you've been around for ages, and we appreciate you for that. And Elvis said, thanks for putting all this together every single day, and I wish I could watch live more often.
Hey, and thank you so much for the massive support, Elvis. And we wish that you could be here more often. We wish that everyone could be here every single night. And we know that a lot of folks are always busy and out there working. But to that, I say good on y'all. It's good to have a good job and work incredibly hard because each and every person, especially here in the U.S., is playing a big role that is a small part of a large piece of this amazing country. And the same goes for everyone working in all the other countries in the Western world in their own little jobs and niches. They too are important for their nations and their success as a whole, as a country. And I gotta say, I gotta thank you massively for the kind words and the support tonight, Elvis, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we would have never been able to be here for this long and keep this thing going like that, like it has been for years. It's just really crazy. I've been saying that a lot lately, really since it really hit me last night while I was talking about it, that we've been on air for so long, and to look at what was considered to be a big show back then. Let me go show y'all that, because it actually blows me away, Matthew, that back in the day, this actually was a huge show. And I remember, don't you remember, Matthew? I was like running around like a clown in the middle of the night, Matthew, waking you up. You weren't even working on the channel yet. This was like about a month before you were brought on. And I was like, oh my God. I was like, I freaking made it. I was like, we freaking blew up. And let me go see. It was, hold up. Let me see here. It was this one. I don't think you were here for this last night, Matthew, but look at this. This is crazy. The chat got up to, I think, like 300 chats a minute at the 2-hour mark. And then also, that was the peak viewership. 3.7 thousand people, an hour and 58 minutes in. And before that,
that was huge. That was huge for back in the day. That was like massive numbers right there. Still like 3 or 4 times larger than Hot Dog Man at his peak, which is crazy. This was the first one, wasn't it?
This was like the 4th one in, actually.
Oh, the 4th one in. That's the 4th one in. That's still a brand new channel, and it's still outperforming the Hot Dog Man by a factor of 4.
Yeah, it was just a crazy thing to see. I'm just absolutely blown away that we have come so far since then. Because if y'all don't know, folks, this was considered to be the biggest night that we had for a long time on the channel. For about 2 months after that, or 3 months after that, this still was the biggest night that we had ever had for his show. And nowadays, low night is having about 9 or 8,000 people on at the peak. It's just really crazy to think about that, to think about how far this channel has come over those years, from the first night where I said that I made it and got 3.7 thousand live viewers, to now in the modern day, we have made it to where it's pretty common to see viewerships over 10,000 people live pretty much every single night. I gotta thank you all so much once again. I got to thank you, Elvis, for being one of those folks that have been here, because it's really crazier to even think that while we are looking at these numbers on a screen, these aren't really numbers. Each of these little numbers, literally all the way down from when the stream started, which was at a handful of people, at just 4 watching in the first minute. Those little numbers right there are individual people. Each and every one of y'all is a special little person with their own special story and their own special little journey that y'all have gone through in y'all's lives, pretty much writing your own book every single day y'all been alive about what y'all's stories are, and all of them come together by the thousands every single night to watch what we're saying about the news. It's a position of honor for us to be in. Y'all could get the news from anywhere. Y'all choose to get it from us. And I still have no answer as to why. People say we're entertaining, that we do the news well, that it's well researched. The reality, folks, is that that's always what Matthew and me have done our entire lives. We've never gotten, and I don't say this as a Rodney Dangerfield joke, it is quite true, we have never gotten a lick of respect for it ever, especially from people that you would think would give some respect or encouragement. There was never hardly any. So it's really crazy to see that so many people actually do appreciate this sort of thing that we do and the news that we cover, because it's an actual sincere thing. It's not something that's said as sort of a transactional thing where they hold it over you later or they do it to get some kind of leverage. It's a legit, sincere appreciation that many of y'all have for what we do, and we thank y'all greatly for that. I cannot thank you all enough for that. And I got to thank you greatly, Elvis, for your massive support, because you help us to make this possible each and every day. We are always love to cover the news, and we love to know that a lot of people appreciate what we do. But folks like you actually support this channel and help us to be able to pay the bills and and eat our nice meals behind the scenes so that way we can get on air and do this every single night. If it wasn't for folks like you, we would have never been able to make this thing possible. And I got to give you a huge thanks along with everyone else who's supporting and the folks who are not supporting and are just watching tonight, because each and every one of y'all in y'all's own special way has made this thing possible for years on end at this point. So a huge thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And also, by the way, Legend Leo said in the live chat, your view duration is really good. I think you might have scrolled past that when you were showing the stats. Like, we actually do maintain a pretty good viewer duration. Like, I do say so myself, not to brag or anything like that, but we actually monitor those stats to make sure that we're actually putting out good content. And also, people like Mr. Beast, they obsess over numbers like that too. So we typically get on average at least a 50% view duration on our videos. And our live streams, I think it's somewhere around 20 minutes to 25 minutes on average that most people watch the live stream. Which is extremely high for a stream with this length. That's pretty good, considering how many people watch it every single night. So, yeah, that's actually pretty solid. Like, thank you for that compliment, by the way. I saw you say that. I was like, oh, yeah, you're a YouTuber, too, so you know about the viewer duration. So, pretty cool. But anyways, jumping on to our next super chat here. This one goes to Glock, Who's There, LSA. Throws in a generous $50 donation as well. And thank you very much, Mr. Glock, for that support. And we do appreciate that. And he did not leave a comment. He left a super sticker, though, of the YouTube creature jumping around, and we do appreciate that. And Enforcer, what say you?
I gotta thank you for the massive support, Glock, Who's There, and helping this channel to keep on rolling. Because folks like you, while not throwing in comments, are a big part in also helping this channel to keep on running. I gotta thank you massively once again, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we would have never been able to keep this thing possible. We would have never been able to keep it running. And I gotta thank you for your specific pride and patriotism in the Lee Spring Army, because your name is literally Glock, Who's There, LSA, and you also have a profile picture of the LSA flag, which is really cool to see. And I gotta thank you so much for that once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And also, really quickly, I want to see here. There was a live chat here that I wanted to address just a second ago. Let's see. Really quickly, I'm trying to see what someone said. Actually, it was the view duration thing. Crazily enough, view duration is incredibly good on a lot of our videos. We usually are hitting into the mid 40s or even the mid 50% on view duration. And really quickly, Matthew, I actually want to take one of your videos and show it off here for everyone for its view duration that we had recently. And this was the one. I think this was the video. Yeah, this was the video about Operation Spiderweb that you made earlier in the day on that very day. Matthew actually got a 54% of viewer duration on a video. And just to let you all know, that's actually the viewer duration that Mr. Beast would consider ideal for his videos that he puts out, is having a viewer percentage duration like that. Usually my videos, just to be entirely honest with y'all, actually do a little bit worse in viewer duration. Usually mine's somewhere in the mid 40s. But sometimes they can get up to the high 40s, and sometimes they even get up to 50%. But most of the time, Matthew's videos actually get up very close to 50%, like the high 40s, or they get into the very low 50s. This is actually one that sticks out. It's actually doing amazingly well compared to both of us, and it shows that on average most of everyone watched at least more than half of the video, so that's actually a really impressive kind of a stat right there. You know, for all the YouTubers out there who may be watching, this is something that kind of speaks for itself as far as the quality, especially the quality that Matthew put out on this video. I remember he did like hours of research leading up into this one to do a 15-minute and 40-second long video, and it certainly showed with how long people were watching and listening, because a lot of people were really invested in the kind of story that Matthew was telling throughout the video, which was the story of Operation Spiderweb. So,
man,
really,
I'll tell you what, the videos are my pride and joy. That's where most of my like effort goes into on the channel, is the videos. And most of and honestly, I'm not saying I don't put effort into the streams. Obviously, I put effort into that on my end as well. But the Enforcer puts a little bit more effort, actually a lot more effort in on the streams than I do. So the videos are like my wheelhouse to a certain degree, even though the Enforcer does them as well. I really like go really deep into effort on the videos a lot to try to perfect those. And also the Enforcer puts a ton of effort in on the streams to perfect those as well. So between the two, like, we got pretty good solid stats between the two. So thankfully y'all are liking it, because that's our goal.
Yeah, also I think one of the things why my viewer duration is low is that I end up making my videos a lot like an annotated stream. I just kind of like yap through them like I would. And also, a lot of y'all may notice Matthew's videos are actually edited. mine are one take when they're put out. Like if y'all ever watch those in the short war videos, y'all will see that sometimes I'll just screw up. It's not even edited out. I'll just be, oh, dang it, I said the wrong thing here. Let me say this. And then I'll just keep going. Is because I only do my videos in one full take. Matthew will actually do multiple takes to make sure that it ends up being the most well polished. So really the main thing, the main flagship thing for me is the streams. They take a lot of time and effort to do every day. Crazily enough, running a live stream, at least on my end, takes about 3 or 4 times the amount of time that it takes Matthew or me to make a video. So it's a pretty big thing as far as the work side of things. So I consider it to be kind of like my flagship thing that we do.
Holy cow!
Holy
Thank
moly!
you, Mark the Possum. Just throwing a 500 New Zealand. Damn, thank you. That's huge.
Holy smokes! I got to say that's actually incredible right there. So we will cut this short right here because we're just kind of yapping now about the stats. But beyond that,
Also, by the way, I was going to say something here. I was about to say something. Well, dang, I forgot almost what I was going to say. I was going to mention something about the videos. What were you saying right before you just got done saying something there? I saw the possum comment there for a second and got distracted. So what were you about to say?
It was something about high view durations and how much time I was spending running or putting together a stream, something along those lines.
Yeah, I can't remember exactly what it is, but if it comes back to me, I'll let you know though. But I forgot what it was.
Well, anyways, I think that we were both thrown off by the massive super chat that was just thrown in by Mark the Kinetic Possum. So with that, I do thank you massively for support once again, Glock, Who's There, LSA, for helping this channel to keep it running and making it possible, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to eat. And so a big thanks to you so much once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and to address that massive and generous support from Mark the Kinetic Possum, not Mark the Kinetic Possum, he put in a 500 New Zealand, which is about 300 USD. And thank you very much, Mark, for one of the largest super chats of the night. In fact, the largest, and we do appreciate that very much. And Mark said, "Good day, Possums and Enforcers. Good call on being cautious about the debris video." And also, just to mention it, by the way, Mark had pointed out that there was apparently a scheduled rocket launch around the area of Kazakhstan. I'll just scroll back up here and see if I can get that post one more time. Let me scroll back up and see if I can spot it. Yeah, he said there was a failed rocket launch from Baikonur in Kazakhstan on Tuesday. So that might be maybe footage from that. Everybody was saying the footage was from today. That's what they were claiming. But of course, some people might be going back and grabbing an old video from a couple days back and claiming it was today. But most people that saw it believed it was from today. And I don't have enough information to say with confidence whether that was that old video or not. It's a good theory, but I'm not really sure. I'm still a bit on the fence. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to say a huge thanks to you for the massive support and help with this channel to keep it running. And I also have to say on top of that, a massive, incredible thanks to you for not only supporting the channel, but appreciating that we actually try and make sure that our news stories are correct. We ain't running with the train robbery stories around here. Those aren't the current kind of stories that we peddle in. We had a pretty long and lengthy conversation about whether or not we should end up running the story about the IRBM failure, and we ended up not. I would say that that's a pretty good call. I think it's better for us to be more cautious at times like that, because we didn't have proof to really assert either claim. But beyond that, I do thank you massively for the support and helping this channel to keep on rolling, Mark, because if it was not for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to keep this channel running. We wouldn't be able to make those kinds of calls. Well, honestly, I was telling Matthew earlier tonight, I was like, like, I'll be honest with y'all, the kind of talk that we were having, I was saying, that's a really big news topic. I mean, the only other big news thing that happened today was the major attacks on the airfields. So if we go with that, it's certain to be a big piece of news. But the problem is that should we go with that or not? Because while, yes, it would be sensational for the large part, maybe naturally so, to cover that story, I don't really know if we have enough proof to do it. And then we chatted it out, and then we both decided there's just not enough proof to cover that story. We'll go with the other big news of the day, which was the major attacks on the Russian airfields. And crazily enough, people still flooded in the droves, nearly 12.7 thousand of y'all at a time, actually 12.7 thousand of y'all exactly at the peak, to listen to what happened about the airfield attacks today. And it's really a great thing to know that we actually have the ability, and we have such a discerning audience, that we do not have to get into pretty much yellow journalism and sensationalism to make our news stories. We actually can just stick with the facts, stick with the news, and be able to pick whether a story is true or not, and whether to run with it or not, and then actually cover the stuff that we have enough facts and information about to actually say, without a doubt, actually did happen. And so a huge thanks to you so much once again for the massive support, Mark, and helping this channel to keep on running. And thank you for having been around for an incredibly long time as well. You've been around with this channel pretty much since its opening days, and I got to thank you for the incredibly massive support and helping this channel to keep on running still to this day. And so with that, a big thanks to you so much once again. Hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. And our next one here goes to Jack Ray, who threw in a $50 donation. And thank you, Jack, as well for that 50 and also helping to keep the channel running. And he said, what are some of your favorite steam locomotives?
Oh, Jack Ray's asking the real questions. Oh, man. Well, I actually have to tell you that I do have a couple. I'm generally more of a diesel-electric kind of a fan. I like diesel-electric engines these days more than steam because they're less maintenance-intensive, and you can also still see a lot of those around still to this day, at least the ones I'm into. But as far as steam engines, there are a few. I would generally have to say that the L and N B, I believe it's the B65, would be one of my favorites. Let me see if there's any pictures of it. Well, that's kind of a picture of it. Not really. This is actually from a game called Railroader. But these were the bigger ones of the Louisville and Nashville Railroad. I believe that they were close to being a Berkshire. It's a 284. Really, really beefy things right here. Really impressive. But let me just go put up the Big Emma. Because that ought to find a good picture of it. So yeah, these actually are the Big Emmas, or the M1s, or the B65s. These things are pretty cool. I like them because they were the largest steam-powered attractive effort that was ever seen on the L&N railroads. So I like those because those are pretty neat. Another one that I'd like is the, let's see here. It is the Norfolk and Western, let's see. It's the Norfolk and Western 611, which is a J class Northern. These are really cool looking as well. A streamlined train, I believe, for the, what was it? It was the Powhatan Arrow passenger train, I believe. These look really cool. I like the color. It's a very beautiful color. The Norfolk and Western had great steam engines. They also had the Alleghenies, which were like the big boys or the Challengers, but for the East Coast, not the Great Plains, like Sherman Hill and stuff, where the Union Pacific was operating out of. So let me see if I can go pull up an Allegheny, because those are pretty cool. Here we go. Here is a big-ass Allegheny right here, a 2666. These things were mental. I always thought they were cool. And I also like them because they're not as mainstream as the Big Boy. The Big Boy gets all the press, but there were a lot of articulated steam engines out there in America back in the day. And this was the one that actually was more native to our kind of corner of the country here in the Southeast. So I always found these to be pretty unique. Although the reality is that they really weren't used in the Southeast. They were used more so up in the Northeast around Pennsylvania. But I still find these things to be really neat. Another really one of my favorite classes, and it really is a very standard one, is the 440 American type locomotive. And any of these, I just find them to be pretty cool. Now, there are exceptions. Some of these are hideous. Like I will say that this blue color that the Central Pacific had, it's not really my kind of a jive, but generally they looked kind of neat. I generally like them. Also, this is actually one from the, I actually don't know what railroad it is. The locomotive is called the Texas. I was about to be like, actually, this is from the Texas and Pacific. I was going to be like, wow, that's neat. But hell if I know, actually. I don't even know what railroad that is. But these are a really standard kind of a locomotive throughout pretty much most, if not all, of American history. And one last one I have to cover, because this has to be everyone's favorite. There is no room for this. The Southern Crescent let's see. Actually, I think it's a 462. Am I sure about that? Oh yeah, I actually am right. The Southern Crescent Limited's Pacifics. I think they're pretty cool. There's not really a good picture of one for some reason out here, but these are pretty neat. It's the Southern Railway's Pacific steam engines that would carry their passenger express train, the Southern Crescent, or the Crescent Limited, as it was actually called. The Crescent actually still runs, still to this day, from New York City to New Orleans as an Amtrak service. It's just that they don't have the famous Southern Railway imagery to go along with it anymore. It's just a standard run-of-the-mill kind of an Amtrak service. Still, these things are pretty neat. I like them because they're green. I mean, it's like the only time that you ever saw any kind of color being put onto an American locomotive of any type. So I thought they looked pretty cool. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. Jack Ray, I got to thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible and keep it running. Also, Barry Woodward asked one bonus question before we move on from the question from Jack Ray. What about the engine on the series The Wild Wild West? Let me go pull that one up. The Wild Wild West locomotive. Let me go see if I can pull that up here. Locomotive. Here we go. Let's see, images. Dang, let's see here. Unfortunately, I can't tell you. There was actually another. I was thinking of another show right there, the Hell on Wheels television series, which actually was put out recently. And a lot of people always ask, what kind of a locomotive was that they were using? And the reality is that it actually wasn't real. The entire thing was made out of cardboard, plywood, and I think some metallic parts, but the entire thing was a prop made up of raw fiction. It wasn't actually a real locomotive that was ever used. And they didn't build one specially that actually could run for that show because they didn't have the budget for it. So that's actually a little bit of an interesting story with that. Also, by the way, cannot do the railroad segment without mentioning the Pennsylvania Railroad T1. I gotta bring this one up because being a bit of a historian myself and a big fan of preservation, it's really neat to hear of people wanting to bring back pieces of history from the dead, and this locomotive is one of them. It is a streamlined T1 locomotive specifically made for high-speed passenger express services over the higher mountainous grades of the Pennsylvania Railroad. They never really were used for that. They pretty much came in right at the moment that steam engines were going extinct, and all of these types, all of the locomotives of this type were scrapped, and they have ceased to exist for about the past 60 years. There is currently a group called the T1 Trust. I'll show you all their website right here. I'm not sponsored by them, and I'm not a member of the T1 Trust or anything, but I find their project to be very admirable, and they're always very transparent about the progress they're making. They are actually entering final assembly of their Pennsylvania Railroad T1 right now at this moment. And so if you would like to support a group of people who actually are trying to bring a piece of American history alive in the form of a Pennsylvania Railroad T1, you can actually go straight to this website, right? Yes, disconnect, so we're going to have to wait for the lag to pass. Oh god, dude! OBS always disconnects at the best times, doesn't it? But
also, by the way, Lord Cog asked a question. He said, while you're on the train topic, anything about the Missouri Pacific line? And because as a kid, Lord Cog used to play on the abandoned bridges around Round Rock, Texas. I just want to know.
Oh, really? Missouri Pacific is actually interesting. Let me go pull them up because their paint job was really, really interesting. So let me show it to you here. Let's see here. I can't find any of their freight trains. Here's one of their passenger trains. And you can actually see a Gulf Mobile and Ohio one just hiding in the background. Let me go show y'all the Missouri Pacific because there we go. There's their heritage unit, at least in the modern day. I really like their livery. It kind of reminds me of the post office a little bit. And I also kind of like that light blue look. It's a little bit rare. But that was the Missouri Pacific. Their rail line kind of existed in the same place as a lot of other giants of the Midwest, generally throughout Kansas, so kind of sharing a lot of territory with the Union Pacific and the adjacent Topeka and Santa Fe, and also along with the Illinois Central as well, and the Rock Island Railroad, which also were really big around this area. It's a railroad that I actually do not know a lot about. I know a lot about the Rock Island Railroad and the Illinois Central. I do like the paint jobs in the Missouri Pacific, but I never looked into them a great deal. I know that towards the end of their lifetime, though, they ended up getting the Union Pacific paint scheme, and then they just put Missouri Pacific on the side of them instead of Union Pacific, which always threw me for a loop when I saw them when I was younger, because I was like, what the hell? And then I finally found out eventually there was a completely different company called Missouri Pacific, but at the end of their company's history, they pretty much just adopted the colors of the Union Pacific because they would later on merge into the Union Pacific as a part of their railroad. But still a pretty interesting one, but it is an absolute shame, Lord Cog, actually, because a lot of the railroads of old that were giants of industry, and not only that were very important in shaping what America is today, pretty much all of them have long since passed. They hardly even exist in name anymore. Like one of the main namesake railroads of Alabama, which is the Louisville and Nashville, and also the Southern, which I'm a huge fan of both, have pretty much disappeared. There is no mention of the Louisville and Nashville in the name CSX. That is Chessie Seaboard Consolidated. That's what CSX stands for. So there isn't even a mention of the Louisville and Nashville in that name. They do have a heritage unit for it, but that's about it. And then the Norfolk Southern is a little bit more direct. The Southern Railway still exists in name to a sense, but a lot of the heritage and legacy that they left behind in what they did in the United States has pretty much all disappeared. Kind of like with the times, it's just kind of disappeared like the shifting of the sands. But still, it's an absolute shame because there were so many cool and interesting railroads that have either merged into larger ones or just largely ceased to exist that were such an interesting part of America's, really America's most formative years as a country. But still, I got to thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, Jack Ray. I hope that was the biggest railroad rabbit hole that we could give tonight. I'm sure that someone else will probably throw in a super chat for a second one, much to Matthew's displeasure, unfortunately. But I do love talking about trains. It's just a wonderful thing. Also, Blazing Homie said Louisville doesn't even have a passenger train line. Really? Really? Like, at all? Let me check that. That's interesting. Did they get rid of all their stations as well? Oh, dude, that's actually whack. It looks like they don't even have a train station in Louisville anymore. That's wild. I think there actually was a service that ran from Louisville to Chicago at some point, and they got rid of it in like the late 80s because they said there wasn't enough ridership for it, which is just a shame, you know? Just a real shame. And I don't really think there's a lot, like, there's not really an interconnected passenger rail service in America anymore, which really is sad. But hopefully one day it'll eventually return. I mean, Brightline is certainly showing, at least down in Florida, that there is a market for longer distance, like middle distance passenger rail, which is good. It is showing that there is an interest there by the public for that sort of a thing. It's just that I didn't really like how Brightline did it. Like, when I actually went down there in practice and saw how Brightline runs their show, I was like, this isn't really like the railroad show. They're pretending like it's an airplane on rails. And I didn't like that. It kind of took away the whole thing of the train being the train, you know, where you just stood on the platform and you waited for the train to show up. No, they had you wait up in the actual station like it was an airport terminal, and then you would board the train like a plane nearly. And I was like, I don't really like that. That just doesn't really seem as, like, it doesn't seem as organic as normal railroading does, like with Amtrak, where they're like, here's your ticket, you can go stand out on the platform or wait in here if you want, it's up to you. And also, I didn't like the whole security screening thing that they had, because it was really quite literally for show and had nothing to do with security, and that also takes away from the whole aspect of the railroads just being what they are. But still, it is showing that railroads do have a chance to grow in America again, and hopefully we'll see that either through Amtrak or by private rail companies, American railroads will return back to the forefront again as an equally important part of the American transportation industry as cars and aircraft currently hold at the moment. But anyways, with that, I hope that is addressed the best I can, and it is time for us to get on into the next one.
All right, and our next one here is going to go to Can-Am All the Way, who puts in a $28 donation, and thank you very much, Mr. Can-Am, for that support. He said, a suggestion to you, a daily, approximately 2 to 3 minute Enforcer Matt voice segment before the Zelenskyy speech.
What does he mean by that, man? What does he mean?
Like maybe the voices? I think he's meaning like the voice, you know, like the Rodney and all that stuff.
Oh, you know, actually, we've been getting a lot of requests for voices lately. Like, we used to get hated on for doing voices. Like, apparently we were like the ire of the whole internet for voices, because there was like this redneck guy from Lower Alabama that runs his own YouTube channel. And Matthew went over there one day and he was watching it, and he commented on it on, I think, the Enforcer account, or the Enforcer Matt account. I'm not really sure which one it was. And the guy immediately said, oh, it's that guy that does the voices. And I was like, wow, it's like, so that's all we're known for, like, on the whole internet, is just doing voices. So we kind of stopped doing them, because for some reason, apparently a lot of the people out there who, you know what, I'll tell y'all honestly, like, what we call them, but this is the only time I'm ever going to say it. We call them the circle jerks. Like those people, absolutely act like they cannot joke at all, and they're way too serious for what they are, which are just random people on the internet voicing their opinions on what the news is, which is what we do as well. And a lot of them take themselves way too seriously. I mean, we ran into one on Twitter again the other day. They take themselves so seriously that although they have done stuff with us in the past, they completely denied doing anything with us years ago even. And I was like, that's just weird. I don't know what's up with that. But beyond that, that is something that we've had to deal with in the past. So that's why we kind of limited the voices, and also people would throw in, like some people would throw in insane amounts of complaints on the channel when we did them. So, I mean, we could do voices again. It's just that we'll have to brace ourselves for being the ire of the internet again, for acting like what we are, which, you know, isn't that serious. A lot of people have like these delusions of grandeur where they run a YouTube channel and they get like 300 something thousand subs, and then they pretend like they're like a deity, like they can't joke. They're too high and mighty to actually have a joke or crack one. And it's just so lame. It's honestly lamer coming from people, man, who ran like a bomb show on like a television network. It's like one, the streams aren't succeeding. Two, the show didn't succeed. It's like I don't really care, but at the same time, it's like doing all that and then failing at most of it, and then still acting like you're untouchable and cannot joke or cannot be around anyone else who cracks jokes. It's like, I don't really get that. Like, that will never make sense to me. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that somewhat well, at least the best I can. But a huge thanks to you once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, so our next one here goes to Just Chillin', who puts in a $25 donation, and thank you very much, Just Chillin', for that $25 support, and we do appreciate that very much. And they did not leave a comment from what I can tell. Let me double check that real quick and make sure that that is the case. And I'm scrolling back up here to go and find it right now. There's a very long list that we've gotten tonight. And yes, it was just a super chat alone. And thank you very much once again for that, Just Chillin'. And Enforcer, what say you?
I gotta thank you for the support, Just Chillin'. You didn't throw in a comment, but we're just chilling here like a couple of cold beers. And I gotta thank you once again for helping this channel to keep running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to keep this channel running, and we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible. So a huge, massive thanks to you so much once again. And with that, it is time for us to move on into the next one. But a massive thanks to you so much once again.
Yes, indeed. And our next one here goes to Barry Young, who puts in a $22 donation. And thank you very much, Barry, as well, for that support. He said, can we get some merchandise for the LSA, please? And I know it's a stretch, but a Marmot squishy or even an LSA mug. And years of watching y'all daily, and I would love something to represent the LSA. And Barry, I will tell you, first of all, thank you for that support. Number two, sadly, it might be a while before we have merch again, because we got a lot of major life decisions coming up this year, like moving and things like that. And we're having to plan for that in the background and also run the entire business as well. So we're kind of at the limit right now when it comes to things like that. We will be settled, though, later this year. So it is possible that maybe we can ramp that up maybe near the end of this year. But for now, it might be a bit hard for the upcoming months, at least for the next 4 or 5 months or so. So I would like to bring the merch back. And once again, we'll get a little bit more organized next time with it. And also maybe bring some more interesting things, like maybe the Marmot squishy. Maybe that might actually be something we can possibly pull off. But it will be a little bit down the road. But a good suggestion. And Enforcer, what say you?
And I'd have to say that's a great idea. I like the ideas there. I like the ideas, Mr. Monsieur Young. And I got to say that generally I'd have to agree with Matthew on that. Matthew's the one who mostly runs all of the merch stuff. And right now we have had a time of it, folks. Like, we don't talk about that at all on air. I've kind of been touching on it a little bit because finally, like, we're free for the large part from it for the most part, although, you know, we still probably have to deal with something here and there. But we have absolutely had, for the past, I'd say 7 months, 8 months, and of course, we've maybe told like a person here or there, but they're like under an oath of secrecy, and I want to kind of keep it very vague. But we have been through absolute hell for about the past 7 months of a totally different type. And we finally have largely just escaped it for the great deal of it. But still, we have a lot of decisions that are coming up in our life here in the next couple of months that kind of are a result of being able to escape a living hell. So we are trying to figure that out at the moment and try and figure out everything along with that and how to work it and where we're going and what we're doing. And because of that, a lot of our time behind the scenes, if it isn't spent working, it's spent trying to figure out all of those next decisions and points and what is next and what's coming around the corner. We are wanting to do merch again, and we're wanting to figure out a way to do it as best as we possibly can. We know that a lot of people want LSA flags. We know that a lot of people want Marmot plushies, and we know that loads of people want LSA mugs. And if we can end up managing all of that somehow and actually getting that to fruition, probably within the next year, then we are definitely going to be doing that, if we can. But I do have to thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. It has been an incredible thing to know that so many people have been enjoying this channel and helping it to keep running. And of course, it's a great thing to know that y'all been with us this entire time. I hope that we've done good. I hope that we've done good, folks, at hiding some of the crap that we've been through. Because it's I feel a little bit more apt to talk about it a little bit more freely, or just even let y'all know that was going on at this point. Because it was pretty much a situation where we were almost being held hostage to a sense, to some extent. And we were having to try and figure out how to manage it all and also keep the show running every day and then deal with the stress of the show and running this, which is a fun thing, but it also is stressful to an extent. And then also just an insane amount of artificially created stress behind the scenes that just endlessly was going on. And, now we're finally free of it. Like, I've been telling Matthew that for the last few days since Monday. I've been like, we're free, man, we're free. It's been a great thing, but it was tiresome to say the least, and it was a very eye-opening kind of an experience, not in a great way. I'll say that it wasn't an eye-opening kind of a thing where you learn things that you want to learn. It's generally things you learn and you hope you never have to even use anything that you learned again. It was terrible. But anyways. With that, I hope that does address that the best I can. Huge thanks to you so much once again. Hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, so our next one here goes to Mace, also a longtime channel legend, and who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Mace, as well, for that support. He said, I always sing the Air Force song loud and proud when it comes on, and love the intro, and grand and spectacular, just like the LSA, and Slava Ukraine.
Hey, and I love to hear it. I thank you so much for enjoying the intro. I put a lot of work into that thing. Now, that is something that was my, little child, for the large part, that I brought up into baby steps, and then it walked, and then it ran, and then it finally got put out on air after it started running. I always got to say, every single time I talk about that I have to give an insane amount of support and thanks to Marcos Barilari, who was the composer, and also Budapest Scoring, which was our orchestra that we used to get that done. They were really the ones who did all of the heavy lifting. Of course, the orchestra was about 60-something people strong and was the ones who actually made the song into what we are listening to on air every night. But I also have to give a massive shout out to a composer in Buenos Aires in Argentina, and his name is Marcos Barilari. Probably one of the best composers out there. He actually does work for Disney Pixar, and he actually does end up creating orchestral scores that you might end up hearing from time to time. I don't even know how we got a power ensemble like that together of a Disney composer, as well as the same orchestra that did the Squid Game soundtrack and soundtracks for a whole bunch of other famous movies together to do our intro. But it was an absolutely incredible thing. It was a great experience. It was really cool. And also Marcos Barilari is probably the best and the coolest composer that you could ever run into. I mean, he is great at what he does. He was the one who actually really brought my ideas that I said in words into actual life and put it down into a score that the orchestra could play. And then the orchestra made that into the full great sound that we hear on air. And I also got to give a massive shout out to the professional mixers that also came out of Hollywood that also put it all together as well, which I largely go without mentioning, but the mixers were also as big a part of it as the orchestra and also the composer as well. They all did amazing work with it. I really was just the one who threw the money into the fire to get the boiler up to steam for the large part on that, and also put out the general idea, but it was all of them that really made it possible. And I love to hear that you love the Air Force song, because funnily enough, that's actually Marcos Barilari's favorite song as well. But he did an amazing job with it. Jay Bagwell, actually, who's a friend of the channel, said that he loves the part right at the beginning of the Air Force song where it goes with the trombone. And I actually like that. It kind of is supposed to mimic like a plane flying over your head. That's what it's supposed to be sounding like. And it actually was a really creative kind of a thing that he did, because it's not really in any other renditions of the Air Force song. And it was a really, really cool addition, in my opinion. It made it a little bit more playful, but also really proud and patriotic. And I really like that kind of a personality to the song, because it kind of is the same kind of personality that we have here in the channel, is that we aren't too serious, but we are also very proud and patriotic of the country and American and Western interests. And so a huge thanks to you so much once again, Mace, for the support. I love to hear that you love that song. And actually, I'll tell you, my personal opinion on that song is that the Navy song actually turned out the best on the Armed Forces medley. Columbia, the Gem of the Ocean is a great song, and I've heard a lot of people have really good things to say about it. The LSA anthem is just incredibly good. I wish we could get a choir for that, because the orchestration of it is great. A choir would be even better, but choirs cost a lot of money. So that's kind of like what's holding us back on getting any of that with a choir. But the Armed Forces medley was the first one, and it really shows out to be a great one. But my favorite part of the Armed Forces medley, crazily enough, is actually the Navy song, because the Navy song actually was not done. Marcos kind of took that and ran with it as he wanted. I told him that I wanted everything really brassy sounding, and he actually made the Navy song mostly strings, not brass. The only part at the end, the last part at the end was brass, but most of that was strings, and it actually blew me away how good it sounded, the way he did it. I was like, this is just amazing. It actually is my favorite for that reason, because he somehow took his own idea, ran with it, and it ended up being far better than I could have ever anticipated my own original idea being. And that is one hell of a composer with a great deal of skill to do something like that. So with that, I hope that does address that well. Huge thanks to you so much once again. And also, of course, I can't go without mentioning the Star-Spangled Banner. I mean, the Star-Spangled Banner is probably one of the proudest and most patriotic versions of it made in the 21st century. It's a wonderful thing, honestly. I love our version of the Star-Spangled Banner, because it gets across the pride and the patriotism that I think the Star-Spangled Banner should have. I'm just so tired of listening to those sappy solos that people do for the anthem, where they're like, "Oh, say, can you see?" I'm like, no, I hate that. I'm like, let's get that out of here. Let's just make it really proud, fast-paced, and patriotic, because it really gives off the feeling that the Star-Spangled Banner should be giving, and it shouldn't be giving you the feeling that you're listening to a dying animal on the side of the road that just got hit by an 18-wheeler. So with that, I hope that does address that incredibly well. Big thanks to you once again for the support, and with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here is going to go to, guess who? It is going to Gunfox, who puts in 3 super chats in a row. They're each at $20 support, and thank you very much, Gunfox, for that support. And he has 3 days in history in a row. So starting with our first one here, he said, let's see, let me got them in order first. Let's see. Yes, I do have them in order. He said, June 5th night, early June 6, 1944, American airborne landings in Normandy were a series of military operations carried by the United States as part of Operation Overlord and the invasion of Normandy by the Allies. And also a question from the chat.
Hey, and a big shout out to you, Gunfox, coming in with the D-Day facts. And actually, June 6th is going to be tomorrow. So big happy anniversary. Well, not really a happy anniversary, but an anniversary of D-Day is coming tomorrow on June 6th of 2025, which will be, I think, the 81st anniversary of the D-Day landings. It's kind of crazy to think that everyone who was involved in the D-Day landings is pretty much dead at this point, because I remember when they were all alive. Well, a good amount of them were still alive when I was a kid. But let me see here if I can show y'all the airborne landings. Also, man, I liked the way the pictures came out back in the day, man. I don't know what it was about the lenses and like the colorized pictures that they had, but they always came out with like this warm glow.
Yeah, and also, like, I think the people just looked different back then. Like, they really did look a lot different.
I honestly think it's the haircuts, really.
Haircuts, facial features, and honestly, the people's faces just look a lot different. Like, I don't know how old these guys were in this photo right here, but they look like they're honestly pretty old. Like, what were they, like 60 or 70 here or something?
Oh no, man, these guys were like in their 40s and 50s.
Oh damn, they aged a lot. Yeah, they're much older looking than they really are.
Yeah, I mean it's a really interesting kind of a thing. Also, man, I love those classic maps, man, like the giant mulberry leaf maps that they would have. Those
Oh
are
yeah,
just so cool.
yeah, I like those. They're pretty cool.
Yeah, and so, anyways, let's get to the actual airborne landings here because that's what we're here for. So let me see if I can find us here the airborne landings. Oh, wait a minute, did they just hold up? Where in the world? So did they go over the order of battle where they dropped off the guys behind the? Here we go. The airborne operations. Hey, look, there's the gliders actually being dropped off. You can see them down there in the fields below. It was a really cool kind of an operation, really, with how the gliders worked, because a lot of people believe that they jumped out of the C-47s or the DC-3s, but actually the reality was is that a lot of these guys were actually dropped off in gliders. So the C-47s would fly in, they would release the tow cable from inside of the glider, and then one of the airborne infantrymen himself, who was the pilot of this thing, would glide it on down to the ground, land it, and then they'd hop out if the landing was successful. If the landing wasn't successful, there was a lot of wounded on the spot, or killed. But still, a really kind of a cool thing, honestly. Matthew, when you think about it, man, it was kind of like a glide bomb in the modern day, but just filled with infantry.
Yeah, it kind of was, honestly. It's kind of weird that way.
Yeah, it's a really cool thing, actually, how all the airborne operations work. And of course, all of y'all know that they flooded the fields behind the beaches, so that way some of the paratroopers would drown, and some of them did drown, actually. But that's a little bit more overstated than it really was. Yes, some of them did drown, but it wasn't just droves of them. Most of them ended up landing in about waist-high water, but it was manageable to get out of it. Beyond that, though, D-Day was one hell of an operation, and a really cool one, really, when you think about it. I wish we could find. Actually, I think I just show it to y'all now. The Pegasus Bridge, which was held by the British paratroopers until they were relieved the next day. Yeah, here's the Pegasus Bridge right here. So I'll drop y'all down near to it, and y'all can take a look at the Pegasus Bridge. Oh, yes. I see you know your bridges well. This actually was considered a. Come on, zoom in. Enhance. Hey, there we go. This actually was a very important bridge back in the day because it actually allowed for a crossing over the Caen Canal that went into the open sea, which is just right out over there. And so British paratroopers actually took the bridge and held it until they were relieved later. And that was actually with the weight of the Oysterham garrison falling back from the beach and joining in on the assaults on the bridge as they were falling back towards the city of Caen itself. And the British actually were able to manage to hold the bridge, and it was then relieved later on by the Allied forces that were moving off of the beach and on further inland. It was a really interesting kind of an operation. Really cool, and it was also very well implemented and conducted. Unlike Operation Market Garden later, which ended up falling short, a bridge too far, as they say, D-Day was quite literally a textbook amphibious landing that was done perfectly and also was able to deceive the Nazis well enough that they never really expected for the amphibious landing to actually land down here in the area of Normandy. They actually expected that it was going to be landing at Pas de Calais, which made no sense. Like, I don't even know why they would have thought that, because they did the same damn thing, actually, if y'all didn't know this, down in Italy. The Nazis were actually pretty easy to trick, is the reality of it, because every single time we did a deception campaign on them, they believe it almost at face value. They actually believed, if I remember correctly, let me actually go pull up the Sicily landings, because those were done almost the same way as Normandy. But let me see where they landed here real quick. Dang, let me see here. I gotta go find the original beach that they landed on. Oh, so yeah, they landed down here near Syracuse, which is actually famous by antiquity standards as well. But they landed near Syracuse, and the general idea by the Germans was that they wouldn't land there. They'd actually land near to Palermo, because this was the closest to Tunisia. So the idea was that the Allies would take the shortest route. We actually took the longer one, and we ended up landing at Syracuse. And that was all because of Operation Mincemeat, where we dropped off a dead body off the coast of fascist Spain that had some fake landing plans on them. And those landing plans said that we would land somewhere around Palermo, and then the Nazis believed it, and then we didn't, and so then we landed at Syracuse instead, and they were completely taken off guard. You can actually see that here, because look at the force disposition on Sicily. You will notice that some of the larger units actually were in the northern area. You'll see that there are two what appears to be infantry infantry divisions, it appears, at least from what I'm seeing right here, an infantry brigade at Palermo, and then also a mechanized infantry brigade, another infantry brigade, and then another, well, actually, these are all divisions, actually, correction there, sorry. And then another infantry division, all of them around the area of Palermo. Meanwhile, down here, there was only one whole infantry division covering that southern coastline, one infantry division in reserve near, apparently, let's see, the town of Zini. There was also the only armored division on Sicily Island around the area of Caligron, and then there was also another 2 infantry and mechanized divisions in reserve in the middle of Sicily, ready to move wherever they needed to. So it actually is a little bit ridiculous that they fell for that twice, because they fell for that not only in Sicily, they fell for it at Normandy. And you would think that they would have caught on at some point that everything's a deception, and they're clearly not understanding what's actually going on. But Hitler was such a fool, or was more so foolhardy, that he actually believed that he could just look at things at face value and believe them for what they were on a military standard, which just is not the case. And it's just a really funny thing that people always say that the Germans were really good at fighting in World War II and they were great tacticians, when the reality is that Hitler was actually pretty damn bad at it, and if it wasn't for the element of surprise, they lost every single major battle or campaign throughout the rest of World War II when it actually got into a drawn-out battle. Honestly, the Germans in World War II operated the same way as the Imperial Japanese did, because they lived off of the idea of the decisive battle or the decisive strike. I forgot what the Japanese word for it was, but it was a specific doctrine that they had at the time, that they have to be able to conduct a initial strike so devastating to their enemy that they just cannot recover, and they pretty much win the war as a result of that devastating first strike. If they didn't succeed on that first strike, they were going to be brought into a protracted war that they would inevitably lose. And that's the premise that the Japanese went into on December 7th, was that strike had to be so decisive and hit exactly what it needed to and destroy it completely that there was really no way for the U.S. to recover in the Pacific, and the Japanese would be able to secure all of their objectives and then peace out the war before it became drawn out. So the Germans almost operated under the same principle, although they didn't in doctrine, they pretty much did in reality, because they didn't win that first decisive strike and it ended up becoming a prolonged war. They inevitably lost all of them. They lost North Africa, they lost Italy after the Italian government conducted a coup against Benito and threw him out. They also lost the French campaigns, or really the entirety of the Western European theater. They also lost in the Battle of Britain, literally at the beginning of the war in 1940 and 1941. They lost that outright because it wasn't a shock attack, it was a drawn-out air battle. They lost that. They lost Operation Barbarossa in the long term because the Russians were able to withstand the initial onslaught, and then it turned into a dragged-out battle across the whole of Eastern Europe, which they inevitably lost. And it's really just shocking to me how the Germans, or really not really the Germans, but the Nazi Germans, have still been able to keep this aura around them that people actually thought that they were incredibly competent and good at performing on the field, because the reality is that they were good in their initial shock attacks at the opening of the war, but once it became a drawn-out conflict, they inevitably lost every single campaign. But still, I hope that does address that well, Gunfox, and we will make sure to get a live chat in your honor. So what do we got, Matthew?
And also, we have 2 more days in history after this. And in the live chat question for our first one here for Gunfox, he said, let's see here. This one goes to AF Kaplan, who says, how much does each Oreshnik cost to produce and launch?
Oreshniks cost not really a lot to produce because they're actually being modified from an older IRBM called the Rubesh, which is the RS-26. So when an Oreshnik comes into being, it's actually just pretty much a souped-up, turbocharged version of a Rubesh. So they actually don't cost a lot to make. It's probably about maybe a couple of 100,000 or maybe a few million a piece. But to launch them, you're pretty much just, launching them out of the vehicle. The vehicle doesn't get damaged, so there's no value lost there. And generally, it just kind of costs the cost of the missile to launch them. So I hope that answers that question well. And also, I get the message from Matthew that I went way too long on the first rabbit hole. And if I go long on the second rabbit holes, the other 2 I have to go through, we're probably going to be running overtime tonight. So unfortunately, Gunfox, I am going to have to speed up the rabbit holes a little bit. But I hope the first one was just not clean out of the park, because we do want to make sure to get to all of them before the end of the night. So what do we got, Matthew?
All right, so our next one here goes to Gunfox, of course, and his second day in history. He says, 1991, Albuquerque native Sidney Gutierrez, I'm probably saying the last name wrong. They said they blast off as the pilot for the space shuttle mission STS-40, becoming the first Hispanic American in space. And in a few years, he'll serve as the commander for mission STS-59 before retiring.
Hey, that's really cool. Really neat to hear. Honestly, it's always neat to hear stories like that because if y'all didn't know, actually, crazily enough, y'all may remember this. Let me go pull up this statue, the Thomas Jefferson, New York City statue. Let me see here if I can find the one that was in City Hall. This one right here, actually. This was in New York City Hall. And y'all will find this interesting because some of y'all may remember when this was a part of the big statue removal zeitgeist that was going on at the earlier part of the 2020s and the latter part of the 2010s when statues were getting removed all over the place. This was probably the ones that was the most shocking because nobody really considers the founding fathers to be anyone whose statue should be touched, considering that they're founders of the country, although others would disagree. What's actually interesting about this statue is that it was actually made specifically out of the private purse of a Jewish admiral. Actually, it was the Jewish Commodore, which was the highest rank in the Navy at the time in the 1840s, in the U.S. Navy. And it actually was specifically because this Jewish admiral, Jewish Commodore, we could call him an admiral by modern sense because that was pretty much the title he held at the time. This Jewish Commodore actually had the statue commissioned out of his own private funds out of a deep respect for Thomas Jefferson because he actually exercised the idea of freedom of religion and that it shouldn't really stop or condemn a man, or anyone for that matter, to have a different religion in this country than the majority religion, which was Christianity. And so for that reason, it was actually for that cause alone that this admiral, who was Jewish, mind you, was able to climb the ranks in the Navy. And so he actually had the statue commissioned out of his own private funds and then donated it to the city of New York, which was his home city, and they put it up in Town Hall and kept it there up until just a few years ago when it was considered to be controversial. But beyond that, it's a really interesting thing because when you think about it, America is incredibly special in that right. There's not really a lot of countries out there where quite literally anyone and everyone, if they have enough acumen and enough ability and wit about themselves, can actually succeed. Very few countries have ever really been at that level, and a lot of them are finally just getting there. But America was really the trendsetter in that sort of a thing where anyone, off of their abilities and their wit alone, could actually make it to the top, no matter who they were. And this statue really is a shining example of that, for the more so that man way back in the day, really the first Jewish Commodore of the U.S. Navy, and I believe he still is one of the few, was able to climb to such prominence and rank even back then. And that also kind of defeats, by the way, for a lot of people, the argument that when the founding fathers founded the country, it was freedom of religion for Christians only, which is something that a lot of people argue nowadays. It was freedom of religion for anyone, because Thomas Jefferson died in I believe it was 1827 or Actually, it was 1826 because he actually died on one of the anniversaries of the signing of the Declaration of Independence. He died on, I think it was July 4th of 1826, if I'm not mistaken. And this guy was in the Navy. So if the Founding Fathers had any issue with it, there would have been a written mention of that freedom of religion was only for different denominations of Christianity, but there never was any mention of that, once again clearly showing that it wasn't freedom of religion of different Christian sects, it was freedom of religion for all religions, and for all peoples of the Republic. So a really interesting thing with that. Anyways, with that, I hope that has addressed that well. Thank you once again for the support, Gunfox. And with that, we are on to your last day in history.
All right, and the last one here, which goes to Gunfox, he said Apollo 17, which was December 7th through the 19th of 1972, that was the 11th and final mission of NASA's Apollo program, and the 6th and most recent time that humans have set foot on the moon, and that Gene Cernan and Harrison Schmitt walked on the moon.
And that's really cool to hear. I got to thank you for the support once again, Gunfox, and sharing some incredibly interesting days in history here. I really like these. And also, I gotta say, I think we looked at the symbol for Apollo 17 before, and we were like, this kind of gives off the U.S. Post Office vibes here.
Yeah, it kind of does, honestly, really. It's got the eagle on it.
Yeah, and I think the last time we brought this up, we actually talked about maybe delivering a letter to the moon so that way we could say we had postal service to the moon. But I do thank you so much for the support once again, Gunfox, and bringing up another day in space history because it is incredibly interesting. And we thank you massively for support and helping this channel to keep it running because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible and keep it rolling. And so with that, a massive thanks to you so much once again. And also, Matthew, before we keep moving on, how many super chats do we have left?
We have about 26 left.
Oh, actually, that's manageable. Actually, I was hoping it wouldn't be something like we have 50. I was gonna be like, oh my god. But anyways, dude, I was about to turn into that meme sound bit where he goes, oh my lord, or something like that. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one here goes to Jack Ragnarsson, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Jack, for that $20 support. And he said, if I had a say, I wouldn't sanction Russia, but rather put a complete embargo on Russia, and anyone caught violating those would face 500% tariffs. And also, if they use a nuclear weapon, then the embargo would be permanent. And what are your thoughts?
That pretty much is what was being moved forward by the Senate. It's very close, actually, almost identical. They called it sanctions, but really what it was an embargo on Russian oil exports for anyone in the world. The Senate was actually pushing that forward a little while ago, and the idea was exactly what you're saying, that if any country ever took any Russian oil in after those pretty much embargoes were put in place, a 500% tariff would be put against them for all goods. So I would say that was a pretty good move. I like the idea of that bill. And then, of course, there was a little bit of a thing that happened. I'll just be honest with y'all. Like, it's like this part of the political process is just kind of straightforward, so I'll explain this part. The president, after he said, and, you know, just want to put this out there because this is something that irks me a little. I'm not saying that I don't like the president. I'm just saying that this kind of stuff annoys me a good deal. Is that he said about a week and a half ago at this point that the Russians have 2 weeks, and if they're not really intent on peace, we're going to come down on them. So then the Senate said, we're already going to get a bill cooked up and ready to go, so that way we can get his ass when he doesn't want peace, because he clearly doesn't. And then the president waffled, or as they say, chickened out, and then said, no, let's not do that. And it's like, well, what the hell was the statement? It's like, I don't know. I don't know if this is something that's just, like, is it just me, folks? Or is this just a standard thing across the country and the president doesn't get it or something? I don't know. But when I say something, I follow through on it. Like, there's not going to be, like, if I say something and I give my word for something, it's going to be followed through on. If I say the Russians have 2 weeks to achieve a peace with Ukraine or a ceasefire, or we're coming down on their asses, I would be telling the Senate that was already going to be cooking up that bill, go ahead and start putting that on the fire because it looks like we're about to have to start cooking it here in a little bit. That's what I would have said. But more so, someone, of course, runs their mouth, and then they're scared about doing anything following through with their mouth, and then they back off of it. It's like if you don't have the ability to actually walk the walk, do not talk the talk, because you end up pretending to be a big man, and then really the reality is that you're scared. You can't do that. You gotta walk the walk and talk the talk. You can't do one without the other. It's something that has irked me greatly, and that's why we really don't cover a lot of the internal foreign policy developments from the office of the president anymore here on the channel, is because they are quite literally impossible to follow, because you could say one thing one day and then back out of it the other. I've actually heard that there's been a little saying that's starting to go around that the president always chickens out, and I'd actually have to say that so far I'm not one to get into any of the political mantras, but as far as foreign policy goes, I mean, that's pretty much how it's been going. It's almost always a chickening out. Like when we give an ultimatum to Iran, we chicken out. We give an ultimatum to Russia, we chicken out. We get into a devastating trade war with China, and then we kind of chicken out of that a little bit, but not really, and then we do like a 180 reverse on that. It's just waffling for the sake of it. And it's like if you dedicate yourself to something, like if the tariffs on China was a bad idea, just back off and just give up on it and say, okay, well, we'll figure out something else, and then just never return to that. But with things like Iran and Russia, you can't chicken out on that because it's making us look weak on the strategic level. And it's just getting really kind of it's getting annoying to me. Like, I'm not trying to get political here, but as far as how foreign policy works, that kind of stuff is viewed by weakness as everyone around the world, and it gets annoying to me that the current president and the last president have done nothing over the past 5 years but portray the United States as a weak country as far as follow-through and foreign policy. But with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, at least in my opinion. And thank you once again for helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here is going to go to none other than Chet Dalsky, who put in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Chet, as well, for that support. He said, Enforcers, thank you for sharing your knowledge with others and believing in yourself when others didn't. And I find your courage with global events to be informative and encouraging that the true American beliefs still survive.
And I got to say, that was a very patriotic way of putting that, Chet Dalsky. And I thank you for doing that. I thank you for enjoying our sharing of I wouldn't call it knowledge. Like I wouldn't call it knowledge. I really just read I read a lot and watch a lot of videos, documentaries pretty much. And then I just spew them all back out. Knowledge, might be a little bit hard to miss on that one. As far as being able to recite things, I'm really good at reciting things. But I got to say, believing in ourselves when others didn't. Now that actually is something that I can say. At some points, Matthew's put it to me in a way that I've never really heard it before behind the scenes, and I'm not going to get into some of the extra details. I've once again want to kind of keep that stuff on our personal lives on more of a minimal amount of information for everyone. Not that, not that we want to act like there's a barrier in between us and y'all. It's just that we don't want the whole world knowing about our business with that sort of a thing. But at one point, we were pretty much getting slammed from all ends. We were getting slammed by YouTube. We were getting slammed by, well, we weren't getting slammed by YouTube. We were getting slammed by people on YouTube. We were getting slammed by people at our law school. And then we were also getting slammed by people behind the scenes that you would think would have your best interest in mind, and then they don't. And we dealt with that all simultaneously at the same time for a couple of months. And then recently, over the past 7 months, we dealt with pretty much all those same things again to some extent. Although the people coming after us on YouTube thing wasn't really an issue. It was more so just that the other two issues, well, really just the one issue was amplified to the extreme. And it really is something, it's actually kind of crazy that we've been able to make it through a lot of that stuff. At least as much as we could. We've ended up weathering storms that a lot of people don't even know about. We get on the air every single night, and we try and make it sound like nothing is going on at all. And so far we've done somewhat well with that. Beyond just saying that we're hungry or tired or something, most of y'all don't have a clue of what we've had to go through behind the scenes just to get on air every single night. And it is something that I'd have to say it's a incredible thing to know that y'all have always been here enjoying the channel and watching it and supporting it. Because the very few people that we have told anything about what's been going on behind the scenes have been very sympathetic for what we've gone through. And also, Matthew has found a new best friend, which is well,
Get into too much info.
Getting into too much info there. But beyond that, some people have told us that it was akin to almost living in a political prison, at least to some extent. So we're finally out of that. But I got to thank you so much for the kind words on that, because that really does mean a lot. We've weathered the storms a lot behind the scenes, and we greatly appreciate that folks kind of noticed that a little bit. And so I thank you for the kind words, Chad, and I thank you for enjoying our coverage, because we put a lot of faith and credit into this, and we hope that it shows. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and moving on to our next super chat here. This one goes to Marion Deemert, also longtime channel legend, and thank you very much, Marion, for that $20 support. We do appreciate that. Marion said, "Keep on moving on."
And we will, Marion Deemer. And I got to thank you for the support, and thank you for being an old guard and channel legend of the Lee Spring Army, because folks like you help us keep this thing running and make it possible. So a huge thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, so our next one here goes to Elvis, who puts in a $20 donation once again. And thank you very much, Elvis, for that $20 support. And of course, we appreciate that very much. But Enforcer, what say you?
And a big thanks to you, Elvis. You didn't throw in a comment, but the support is massively appreciative. And we thank you for the massive support you sent in earlier, and this one as well. You're helping this channel to keep rolling, and you're helping us to eat. And we love to eat. We love to eat. Today, we had great food. We had macaroni and cheese, and I was very happy for it. And so with that, thank you so much once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. And our next one here goes to Cookie, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Cookie, as well, for that support. And they said, "Thank you, boys. I look forward to the stream."
And I thank you so much, Cookie, for always being here. One of our viewers down from the land of the Anzacs. And I got to thank you greatly for continuing to enjoy these streams and support them, because you help us to not only keep doing them, but you also help us to have a little bit of a yar, a little bit of a laugh, and also you help us to continue to keep this thing rolling every single day. And so a big thanks to you so much once again. And with that, we are on to the next one. And Adam McLean said, I never felt like I was in a political prison more than when I was in something somewhat political. I'll just have you know, like, the thing that we are dealing with, it's not something that is, it's not something that is like that. It is, well, we aren't really dealing with it anymore. We're like quite literally we're free, emancipated, if you want to call it that, liberated or whatever, use whatever word you want. But ours had a lot more to do with, how do I put it? How we were brought up, kind of, in a sense. And I'm happy, I'm more than happy it's over. And now that it's over, I kind of feel a little bit more free about speaking about it. Because it was absolute hell. Have y'all, I don't know if some of y'all have dealt with this. I'm sure some of y'all have. But have y'all ever just had a moment where you end up looking at someone, and it's someone that you know that you should be able to trust, and then when you look at them, you're just stricken with nothing but fear, because of what they've done, pretty much your entire life to you. Have y'all ever, some of y'all probably have gone through that, but that's something that we've had to go through pretty much our entire lives, and we finally were able to get away from it. So, that's something that I cannot say enough. It is really worth more than anything that you could ever know. If you've ever been in that kind of a situation, it is a great thing to finally feel like you don't have to, you don't have to live in some type of a state of anxiety or fear most of the time, because someone is going to try and screw you over in a position where they're not supposed to do something like that. It's a really great thing to be free from that, to escape it. Because I told Matt, I was like, that is behind me. I'm not going to live in that a single moment. I'm talking about a little bit on air, but that's because, it's finally hitting me for one of the first times. Like, man, I finally escaped that. And when you look back at it all, you sit there and just realize how much of it was we were pretending was normal, but there was nothing normal or good about any of it at all. And we just kind of grew up thinking it was. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that somewhat well, at least the best I can. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here goes to Wait What, who puts in a $20 donation, and they give very much Wait What for that 20 as well, and help to keep the channel running. And they said enforcers in the 20s, and also knowledge.
Hey, and thank you so much for the support. And yes, we are in our 20s. We are in our 20s, which is crazy, because no one else is in their 20s that does this, at least that I know of. I might be mistaken, but I haven't seen them yet. But it's a really great thing to know that we've been able to make it in our 20s doing something like this, because usually people like us, we don't make it because we're too young and people hold it against us. But I'm glad to know that the LSA doesn't. I'm glad to know that a lot of folks out there on YouTube don't, like Dennis Davidoff and Civdiv and Steve Lookner from Agenda Free TV. Bless his heart, had a lot of issues today on his stream. Like it started falling apart, and I feel sorry for the fella, because he's going through he's going through a tough time after everything that happened. And I hope that things are looking up for him, because having little things like that happen, we've run streams and we've gone through stress. When little things like that happen after something big, it feels like the whole world's coming down on you. So hopefully he can get everything back up and running, and everything runs fine on his business side of things, so that things start to return back to normal for him, hopefully soon. But with that, hope that does address that well. Big thanks to you once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to Adam McLean, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Mr. Adam McLean, for that support. He said, Sativa, thumbs up.
And hey, and thank you for the support. And Matthew, do you know what sativa is?
Sativa, I'm not really sure what that means, to be honest with you.
I don't know what it means either, but I do thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Sergey, who puts in a $14 donation. And thank you very much, Sergey, for that $14 support. He said, I guess Russia launched a real ICBM in order to escalate and retaliate, but something went wrong above Kazakhstan. And good show, though, and both yours and theirs in LSA.
Hey, and a big thanks to you once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on rolling. If it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to keep this channel running and make that thing possible. And I got to thank you incredibly for that. And also, we were not really sure if it was a voice crack right there, pretty bad. We were not really sure if it was a IRBM failure, but it could have been. We're just unsure on that. I mean, we can't say that with certainty for now. But still, a big thanks to you so much once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to United Kempo Martial Arts Academy, who puts in a $10 donation. And thank you very much, United Kempo, for the support as well. He said, 2021, Russia, second best military in the world. From 2022 onwards, Russia, second best military in Russia.
Honestly, it's pretty true at this point. The Russians, honestly, are about to become the third best army in Russia after another uprising happens again here. But I do thank you so much for the support, and that's a joke that it never gets old. Honestly, people have been saying that since the beginning of the war for the large part, and it's well true at this point. And so with that, a big thanks to you so much once again. Hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to Doug Halstead, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much, Doug, also for the support. He said, sorry I'm late, and my son was born today. And also, congratulations on that, Doug. He said, the newest LSA member added to this, and after stream pizza's fun.
Hey, and a big congrats, Doug, on becoming a father today. That's really something to hear. A big congratulations to you. I bet that's a big moment for you and your wife, and I hope that y'all are both incredibly proud to have a kid. A kid is an incredibly important thing to have in this country these days because they are going to be the future, and the future is continuing to become a little bit smaller and smaller with the less and less amount of children that are being born these days. That's kind of more of an abstract issue. A lot of people don't focus on that, and I really don't think that should be the pressing issue that people have kids for. I think that people should be having kids because they want to have kids and raise a family as really their primary motivation for it, instead of thinking that the country needs workers. Like that's not going to be in the minds of any parents. But I still congratulate you for having that child. I hope that you raise them well, and make sure to raise them well, because it is quite true, and I'm sure that you know as well, because you were also raised by parents, I'd assume, that raising a child well, sternly, but not to the point that it's just absolute insanity, is a really important kind of a thing. Because eventually, they'll start to think introspectively about how they were raised. And I don't want to make this sound like this is some kind of a warning to you or anything, but just kind of coming off of what we are coming off, make sure to raise them well, not too strict, but not too lax, and make sure that it's a good growing relationship with them. But still, I got to congratulate y'all greatly for that, Doug, and it's great to hear that we have a new member in the Lee Spring Army. And so a huge thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, so our next one here goes to Walther P99, who puts in a $10 donation. And thank you very much, Walther, for that $10 support. He said, did anyone figure out the direction of travel on the debris from missile launch or satellite coming down if it headed toward Ukraine?
From what we're generally understanding, it was traveling east to west, somewhere around Petropavl in northern Kazakhstan, but that's about all we have at the moment. So the debris field was heading towards Ukraine, which does add some credence that it may have been a rationing failure. So with that, I hope that does address that well, and I thank you once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, so our next one goes to Cam Reynolds, and Cam puts in that 10, and thank you very much, Cam, as well, for that $10 support. He said, America got the best pick of the funny mustache people after World War II, and the Soviets got the second-string scientists.
Honestly, it's actually true, because a lot of the scientists had the ability to travel around Germany freely, so a lot of them would go, hey, the Russians are coming, let's pack up our shit and surrender to the Allies instead, not the Comintern, which is what the Soviets really were, and they said, let's surrender to the Americans. So the Americans actually did get the best pick of the scientists, actually. It was the scientists of the lower levels that actually ended up being captured by the Reds. It actually does show when you look at what they were able to research and develop past that point. So with that, I hope that does address that well, and I thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to the Shaniznit, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much, Shaniznit, for that support. They said, any idea or info about UVB-76, the Russian Cold War radio, given the recent code words? And I don't know much about it. And I'm hoping you guys have more info or ideas, or from getting trolled online and LSA. And you're talking about the Russian buzzer. That's what you're talking about. Nobody really knows what that is broadcasting. It's just broadcasting a series of tones and beeps and occasionally some voices. And some people speculate that maybe it's a spy communication system, but nobody's really sure. I'm sure there's somebody out there that knows, but nobody's really certain in the public. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say, unfortunately, we really don't know. I'm not really one of those kind of people who say that the nuclear bombers are flying, and I listen to like publicly transmitted radio broadcasts and go, oh, those are the codes. They're launching the nukes. Like, there's a guy out there who does that every single day, and I don't know how he does it with a straight face every single day. Like, the guy is either living in the most denial possible, or he's living in raw pandemonium every day. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's a blend of the two. But I couldn't, unfortunately, tell you what those codes mean. A lot of people are saying that they're codes to launch in ICBM, but they say that about literally anything. I mean, like, Putin could scratch his ass in a microphone, and you could hear the scratching noise, and then someone would tell you that that's a nuclear code that's just been given, and they're about to kill us all. Like, there's someone out there who will say that, and it's, unfortunately, I just couldn't tell you either way. I generally assume it's probably nothing. That's what we always go with the number stations, is that they're just really absolutely nothing burgers, because we haven't seen so far that any of those codes have been transmitted and then something has been done as a result of that that's ever been publicly measured as a major event. So with that, I hope that does address it the best we can. I thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. But unfortunately, we really have as little answers on that as you would, because number stations are a very cryptic and mysterious kind of a thing. And that's why a lot of the conspiracy theory people gather around them, because it's literally like the ink blot test of the military world. You can literally apply whatever you want to it, because literally nobody knows what they're saying or what the messages mean. But with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Diesel, who puts in a $10 donation. And thank you very much, Diesel, as well, for that support. He said, please do a segment on how the United States could defend military installations against a Chinese drone attack like what happened in Russia.
So the way that the United States could defend against a Chinese drone attack would probably be to implement directed energy weapons in high numbers around airfields. I think that probably would, and also naval installations and any critical infrastructure sites, because I think that would be the way to deal with the drones the easiest. The system will be able to lock on and find these drones a lot quicker than any radar-based system, although they can be assisted by radar. These things can also use artificial intelligence to be able to visually identify the target and then fire at it. And then we could see that those drones could be taken out in droves with the directed energy weapons, or pretty much the laser beam systems. I think that would be the best way to defend against them. Another great way to defend against them would be to make sure that all of our aircraft and also munitions are inside of hardened shelters or any kind of a protected location like that. Generally, all of it is. So it's much more well protected than the Russians. Also, placing nets over any entrances for aircraft or any open storage areas for aircraft, even temporarily, would be a really big important thing, because those drones would not be able to cause significant or severe damage to the airframes if there was a large net around the aircraft. Those drones, like the ones we saw being used by the Ukrainians, are incredibly small, and are so small that even with a decent amount of velocity behind them, the weight wouldn't allow them to puncture most nets, especially ones made in nylon. So that would probably be a good way to move forward with that as well. And then finally, and most importantly, a strong electronic warfare system placed at most bases would be also a pretty prudent sort of a measure as well. None of these are going to be operated with fiber optics. If we're going off the Ukrainian attack, they're all going to be operated with AI. And so if the laser doesn't get them, if they're somehow fiber optically driven, then the laser will get them. If they're not, the electronic warfare system will get them. And if the laser system and the electronic warfare system combined can't get them, then the drones are still going to cause superficial damage, because it's either going to be in hardened shelters, or there's going to be such a large net around most of these aircraft that the explosions will be so far away from actually hitting the airframe that it won't really cause too much damage. So that would be the best kind of answers that I could give to protecting air bases or other naval installations, or even military installations of any type from those kinds of attacks. And so with that, I hope that does address it the best I can. I thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. And our next one here goes to Plant Lord, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much, Plant Lord, as well, for that $10 support. They said, great job as always. And any news on your moving to a new HQ? And also, I do have some news right now. I'll be leaving at some point down the road to go visit one of the places that we're thinking about looking at. I can't tell any information about it, sadly, because that would violate our OPSEC, and we might, be gotten if we did that. So I'm going to be checking it out for about a week. So for about 3 days, I'll be out of town somewhere to go check something out. So y'all will know it because you'll probably hear me talking a little bit lower than usual because I'll be talking probably from either a Airbnb or a hotel room of some sort. So it's coming up in the near future. So we're still exploring. But Enforcer, what say you?
Yeah, I'd have to say that Matthew's trip to Syracuse. Actually, Matthew's trip.
Oh yeah,
somewhere in America. Yeah, that's not where he's going. He's not going to Syracuse, New York. That's up here. He ain't going to Syracuse. That I can rule out for y'all. But beyond that, I would have to say that right now I'm still looking around for Enforcer HQ 3.0 as well. And we are going to be trying to move forward with that eventually to figure out where the HQ is going to end up, because we are trying to figure it out as much as we can. But once again, having to run this stream, we have to do things with a little bit of a crunch time, because we don't really have the ability to take off a lot of time because we have to make sure that this thing runs consistently. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, at least from what we know right now, but we're still searching. And also, I've got to say that due to some reasons that I will also, I won't really disclaim them too much, but once we move into Enforcer HQ 3.0, we're not really going to be publicly broadcasting it like we do with Enforcer HQ 1.0 and 2.0, where we're like, hey, both of these headquarters are in Birmingham, Alabama. Enforcer HQ 3.0 is probably going to be a lot more discreet, generally for reasons that we're trying to ensure that at least on my end, I'm trying to ensure that there won't be any possible stalking that is done from certain people. The public location will not be easily disclosed. If people end up finding it out, then that'll be one thing, but we're not going to be broadcasting it like we do right now with Enforcer HQs 1.0 and 2.0. So with that, I hope that does address that well. So unfortunately, I hate to tell this to all of y'all, even once we get to the new HQ, the specific location of that is probably not going to be specifically mentioned for those reasons. And also someone said stalking. That's true. I don't want to make it sound like we're getting stalked right now. It's just that there is the possibility that once we leave this area, that there is going to be specific individuals. Once they hear where we are, they might try and figure out where we are, and if we want them to know where we are, we'll tell them, and if we don't tell them, we don't want them to know. So that's kind of how it's working. Don't want anyone to think that that's a friend of the channel or anything like that. All of the friends of the channel, like, y'all are great folks, amazing folks. We hang out with y'all in person, talk with y'all. It's always a great time. It's more so other people, and I think the friends of the channel that are from around here will probably know kind of a little bit more of what we're talking about. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here goes to Ryan Guy SR, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much, Ryan Guy, as well. He said, smash that like button and take one from the chat. And LLT LOC, and long live the Republic.
Hey, and long live the Republican. Smash that like button. Smash it. And I got to thank you, Right Guy SR, for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And we will make sure to get a live chat in your honor. And of course, long live the LSA and long live the Republican. What do we got, Matthew? What do we got?
And the live chat goes to Dalton LMAO, who says, what do you guys think the response will be for Operation Spiderweb? And thanks, and LSA.
I think it's just going to be a large drone and missile attacks like we're seeing right now. Because if they wanted to launch an IRBM or something similar, they probably already would have done it, and we haven't seen it so far. So I'm still generally thinking it's just going to be a large drone and missile attacks at this point. And I'm also starting to think that the Russians may not have a large amount of operational IRBMs or ICBMs. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. Thank you once again for sponsoring live chat and helping this channel to keep on running, and we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Andrew Honeycutt, and Andrew put in a 10, and thank you very much, Andrew, for that support. He said, I haven't been on a train nor an ocean liner, but I've been on several types of planes, from big stuff to what I call flying tractors, and it always scares the crap out of me, and fears of heights sucks.
And I would say that would definitely suck, being on a plane with a fear of heights. I've been on a cruise ship, damn well hated that. And honestly, cruise ships don't look bad. It's just that, it's just that we went on the cheapest one possible, and it was a Carnival Cruise Line ship, which already has a bad reputation even now. And back then, it didn't have that bad of a reputation, but we literally got on the ship's last voyage. It was the oldest cruise ship that was purpose-built of its type in the world, and the thing rocked and ebbed like we were in the middle of a North Atlantic storm, and I got so seasick on that thing the whole time that it was like Matthew's train trip, but it was never ending, and it went on for like 3 straight days. I hated that so much. Like, I've never been on a cruise ship again because of that. Trains, love trains, and planes are not bad. I just don't like the whole, like, let's cram them in, like, cattle and economy kind of a deal that goes on with that, where you have, like, no room to even move your arms. Like, I don't really like that too much. But beyond that, flying on planes, it's all right. It's not the greatest experience, but it does get you from point A to point B quickly. But my favorite mode of transport is by train. I just like the calming experience of getting to look out a window as everything passes by you, without having to think about driving or, worry about turbulence or anything like that. But still, I hope that does address that well. Big thanks to you once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one here goes to Adam McLean. And Adam puts in another 10. And thank you very much. He said, it was so nice to see the good news in Ukraine today after watching all the cuckoo circus. And we could not help but to smile throughout the day.
Well, Matthew and me were like in a mix of like shock and laughing at everything that went on today in America because, like, one, it's shocked because it's like, how the hell can the government become a reality TV show where it's like the Housewives of New Jersey and like, like they're going at it. Like, that was one thing. And then the second thing to me is that it's like, it doesn't even look like the American citizens have a say in the government anymore because there's a bunch of billionaires with egos fighting each other. And then the third thing was, this is absolutely hilarious because we kind of already knew, we didn't say it on air, but we kind of already knew that was what was going to happen months ago already. Because, just to be honest with you all, both of them are pretty openly narcissist. I mean, it's not really something that is hidden. I mean, it's pretty public. Like, they're all about, like, their self-image and trying to get power over people. Like, they're pretty messed up people. Like, I'm not saying that makes someone a bad president or someone a bad political person, but a lot of people up there in those kinds of positions are just like that. They're pretty vicious, kind of, like, narcissistic people. And Matthew and me have had a lot of experience with those kinds of people, haven't we, Matthew? Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we have. So when we saw them both get together, we were like, well, we know one person just like that very well, and they're going to clash with each other because they're both going to try and get one up on each other and control the other, and they're going to end up like two falcons with their talons stuck together, spiraling to the ground to their death, pretty much is what they're going to do. Not their literal death, but like their figurative social death for the large part. And we were like, that is guaranteed going to happen. And it's happening, like today, like it started happening. And we were like, well, that was coming around. So it was kind of like a mix of like shock and also just laughing at it. But we're glad to say that we could still get the news out like we did tonight. But it was... Oh, man, y'all don't know how much I kind of hate... well, I don't kind of hate it. I really hate this kind of stuff because it's like the government isn't made for soap operas. Like, it just isn't. I just hate them. Like the kind of like events that are going on today, I hate it so much. It's like, it just makes an embarrassment of our country. It makes an embarrassment of the government. It makes it look like it's being run by a bunch of fools, like it really does. And that's coming off of the cusp of someone who I thought brought it to such a low it couldn't get lower, and now once again it's going even lower. Like, my expectations were low, and somehow they're already getting them lower. Like, that's pretty much what I'm trying to say here. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Kurt Fellman, who puts in a 5. And thank you very much, Kurt, for that support. He said LSA.
Hey, and I'll say, baby. And I thank you for the support. And how about this channel keep on running? And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we have a 5 from Melissa Renee, who puts in a 5 as well. And thank you very much, Melissa, for that support. And she said, since we have Cult of Matt, maybe we need Enforcers Angels too, and LSA.
Hey! And I thank you for the support and help this channel to keep on running. And Enforcers Angels, that sounds like Hell's Angels. That's an interesting idea, though. I do thank you for the support, though, and help this channel to keep on running. And that's actually a pretty cool idea, though. But still, a big thanks to you so much once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Alex Trefu, who puts in a $5 donation. And thank you very much, Alex, for that support. I do not see a comment to address, but we appreciate that very much. And we also have a $5 super chat from Dubber Bob and also Barry Young, who each said Slava Ukraine and LLT, LSA.
And long live the Leah Spring Army, long live the Republic, and Slava Ukraini, Ram Slava. And with that, I hope that does address that well to the both of you. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we have a $5 super chat from Neighborhood Bully Exploration, who said, chassis system trains used to scare me because I thought it was a devil face.
Man, you know, I actually thought that thing was like a messed up cat the whole time, you know? Like, I thought that that little spindly thing was the nose, and this giant thing was the mouth, and that was the ear to the thing, and I thought that we were looking at it from a side profile the whole time I was growing up, and I always thought, man, that is one messed up thing. Like, I don't even know what that is, but it's messed up. But crazily enough, if you ever looked at the original marketing material that made that logo, it's actually just a cat. Let me go show you all the original cat. That was the original cat. That's what that freakish abomination of a simplified logo came out of. And when y'all look at it that way, you can actually see that freakish abomination outline thing where it has like the spindly little nose, which is one of its ears, and then this paw is actually its lower jaw. Like, that's how I always looked at it. And you see it back there. It just doesn't look like that. It does not look like that. It looks like a little demon or a freak impish creature. Like, it doesn't look like a cat. Like, I mean, don't you see that, Matthew?
Yeah, I just don't understand their logo, honestly. It kind of looks crappy.
Dude, like, don't diss on the chassis system thing. Those people are like Swifties. They'll come after you, man. Like, honestly, like, I've seen people like almost like killing each other over someone saying, I don't really like the chassis system logo. I'm going to be frank. It's all right. Like, it's not the best one out there, but I still find that little freakish imp looking thing to be interesting. Like, I think it's an interesting logo. But you got to be careful, man. Those railfan people, they come after you like Swifties. They've been nearly killing each other over whether a heritage unit is real or not for like the past 2 days. And it's just so goofy because D&H heritage unit. Let me just pull it up because I'll show it to y'all, and this has been crazy. I've seen people actually like cuss each other out and threaten like harm to each other on the. Why is that restricted from viewing?
I'm not sure. I wouldn't get near it though.
I wouldn't either. But this is the picture that came out like 2 days ago, and I saw it. I like the Delaware and Hudson liveries. I was like, wow, that's cool that they made a heritage unit for that. And then people just went off. You lying sons of bitches! It's AI! You're lying to me! And like, so finally, like 2 days later, today actually, Norfolk Southern came out and was like, it's real. Please, everyone, stop killing each other over whether a paint job's real or not. And really, it just kind of puts into perspective. I guess these people have like nothing to do because they're like fighting and dying over whether a picture of a paint job is real or not. It's like, does it really? It looks cool. I'll admit that. I like it. But it's like, does it matter if it's real or not? Like, who really cares that much? Like, I don't. Like, I like trains. I don't even care that much. I don't even know why that's a big thing to some people. But still, I really think this thing looks great. Like, I like it a lot. But anyways, with that, it is time for us here to move on to the next one. But a big thanks to you once again. And with that, we're rolling her on.
And the next one goes to Plazant, who puts in a 3, and also LSA Sergeant Figment, who puts in a 2. And thank you both very much for that support, Plazant and LSA Sergeant Figment. And LSA Sergeant Figment said, LSA, hit the like button, and that's in order.
And that is in order from LSA Sergeant Figment. And we actually got up to 4,411 likes tonight, which is pretty damn impressive right there. And so with that, a huge thanks to y'all so much once again, and a big thanks to the both of y'all for supporting this channel and helping it to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here is actually going to be jumping us right into the live chat questions. It's now time to get into our live chat questions and our Morse code decoders of the stream. Tonight, we had Paul Schultz, Kevin J, Mason Miami, Joni Dog, Norm Pritchett, and Arabelle Garbo, who figured out the Morse code. It says, Putin is getting pretty angry, and has anyone told him he's not you when you're hungry? And LOT,
And that is the sound of money. And y'all got that dent on the nail. That was the Morse code message of the night. Now I gotta congratulate y'all greatly for getting that correct. The Least Spring Army Signal Corps goes out of their way to get that correct every single night, and y'all got it correct again. Boy, howdy, are we very proud of y'all. We are proud of y'all. Aren't we proud of them, Matthew?
Yes, indeed.
Yes, indeed. We are proud of them. And so with that, a big shout out to y'all once again. And with that, we're going to be moving into the live chats. And crazily enough, folks, can y'all believe it or not, somehow we actually made it through the super chats quick enough to have a good bit of time to actually address a couple of live chats, more so than just 3. So with that, let's get on into the first one.
All right, so our first question here goes to AF Kaplan, who said, what do you make of there being no U.S. reps at the most recent Ramstein meeting?
Yeah, I don't really know. It's like that Housewives of New Jersey crap. It really probably doesn't really mean anything in the big picture. So I would just generally, I would like generally discredit anything that the current U.S. administration is doing, because they could do something stupid like that, and then the next week they could give Ukraine a whole bunch of weapons, or they could condemn the Ukrainians for being criminals. Like, we just don't really know. So that would be my answer to it. I know that that's a really like nothing burger kind of an answer, but the reality is I just don't really put a lot of stock in anything the U.S. government is currently doing right now, because it's a very temperamental kind of a government. So with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, and we are on to the next one.
All right, so our next live chat question is going to go to N. Hansen, who said, did you hear about the Chinese nationals smuggling crop fungus into the United States?
Oh shoot, I had that on my map the other day. I forgot to mention it. Yeah, the fungus is actually considered an agro-terrorism weapon. And so those Chinese citizens have actually been arrested and are currently being held by federal authorities for trying to smuggle in an agro-terrorism weapon. So yes, I did hear about that, and I think it's once again the Chinese trying to go out of their way to damage the United States any way that they can. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, and we are on to the next one.
And our next live chat question is going to go to Goat, who said, who pays for duds, like when a $1 million rocket doesn't blow up or misfires? And do we still pay for that, or does that happen a lot? And thanks.
Let's see. Do we pay for it? Is like a literal, like, do we pay for the missile, or like do we pay for it like figuratively?
I think you mean like if we pay for it financially.
Yes, because we already bought the missile, so it's kind of like a car. Like if you like buy a car and then it doesn't turn on, it just doesn't turn on. You still own the car. So if we fire it and it's a dud, it's just a loss. Like it just didn't blow up. So shoot another one at them, and just hope that one blows up. That's kind of how it works. So I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here goes to Sheffield Steel, who said, it looks like Ukraine are kicking them while they're down, and could this be the end in sight in a full Russian withdrawal?
I would say that it's probably not going to be a full Russian withdrawal, but the Russians sure as hell are looking like jokes, and the Ukrainians are beating them while they're down at this point on the world stage. I've never seen Russia turned into such a big embarrassment in so many different ways in such a short period of time. I thought the oil refinery attacks were a really big embarrassment to the Russians, but this is even larger. I mean, not only did they get 2 million classified documents about nuclear sites, they also knocked out 34% of all of Russia's bombers. They also hacked into Tupolev. They blew up a whole bunch of railway bridges, hit the Crimea bridge, and then they also are now attacking air bases and oil refineries again, and then also the Russians appear to have possibly failed twice to launch IRBMs or ICBMs at Ukraine as duds. So really, honestly, this has just been the worst 2 weeks for Russia I've ever seen so far as what their standing looks like on a global level. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here goes to Lee and Kate. And they said, after so many successful attacks on military facilities, should Ukraine go back to hitting oil infrastructure? And do you think the U.S. has asked them to ease up on Russian oil facilities?
I would say yes. I think that the Ukrainians are going to be going back to oil refinery attacks. I believe that the U.S. administration in charge right now asked them to roll back those attacks, but the Ukrainians are pressing forward with what they want to do, or they've been given approval in some way, shape, or form. That's what I believe at this moment, because it is quite clear that they are getting back into the action of it in a sense, and that they're going to be keeping that going for some time. But beyond that, I got to thank you so much once again for asking an interesting question. And I just saw someone say, and I got to say, naughty, naughty. Someone called Bushiki in the live chat said, Putin just nuked, like he just shit himself or something. So I had to go on Twitter and try and quickly see if that was something legit or not, and it definitely isn't. It's like a prepper style channel sort of a statement right there. I'm not really a big fan of that kind of bullshit. Like, I'll just be honest, I don't like it when people come in and just start fear mongering, because it's like, wait a minute, I was like, I have to check that out, because rarely do people come in and just lie out of their teeth, but apparently that guy did. Apparently his teeth are so rotten the lies are sifting right through the openings. But anyways, with that, we're going to be moving on into the next one.
All right, and our next live chat question goes to Old Warrior, who says, do you think Kadyrov will have room on his plane for Putin?
I don't know, Don. Does the Don have enough Don room, Don, for the Don pudding, Don? The Don answer is Don. No, Don. Probably not the Don. But a great question, though, I will admit. And so with that, hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, so our next one here is actually a super chat that goes to Matthew Rod, who just threw in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Matthew Rod, for that support, and we appreciate that very much. And there is no comment to address. There's nothing attached except for the super sticker of the Doge waving the #1 flag. And Enforcer, what say you?
Man, that Doge be swinging. Beyond that, I got to thank you for the 5th super chat ever to this channel, Matthew Rod. And I also got to thank you for throwing in that Doge super sticker. We love the Doge. Not the Department of Government Efficiency, but we do like the dog. That dog be dogging. What the dog doing? You're the Doge. We have to know. But beyond that, a big thanks to you so much once again. And with that, we are on to the third to last question of the night.
All right, and this one goes to You're Taking My Life, who said, I saw that a Japanese company had lost contact with a craft that they were trying to land on the moon. Not sure what happened, but could it have anything to do with the weird lights?
Probably just impacted on the surface of the moon and was lost. They probably miscalculated or failed to be able to slow the craft at the proper speed. Just ended up hitting the surface of the moon and kind of pancaking for the large part. That's what I'd assume. But with that, hope that does address that well. And we are on to the second to last question of the night.
And this one goes to Thomas Reese, who said, how big is the possibility of a Russian collapse? Not because of economic and not just because of military, but just a civil unrest.
Civil unrest at the moment is kept with such a thumb on it that it really doesn't have a chance to rise up. So I would say that the chance of civil unrest overthrowing the government is highly unlikely at this point, because we've always thought that it was going to be likely, and we've seen some pretty sizable riots break out in Russia over these years, and they never turn into a full-blown government overthrow. Even the bigger ones never even got close, really. They just kind of got put down, and everyone else was scared to stand up, so it just kind of went away. So with that, I hope that does address it the best I can, and we are on to the final question of the night. And so, who was the lucky last person that threw in the lucky last question of the night?
And that viewer is Live Animal, who said, what would be the payload of an IRBM, and would we expect the U.S. to react massively to such a launch?
I don't really know how the current United States would respond. Under the prior administration, any nuclear, biological, or chemical attacks against Ukraine were supposed to be met with a strong military response and entry of the United States into the war. I don't know how the current administration will respond, but the yield of a IRBM is not exactly the important thing. It's more so at least in the conventional sense of how many thousands of pounds of ordnance it can carry. It's more so about the kind of, I believe it's megatons that it can carry, if I'm getting the measurement correctly. And an Oreshnik IRBM can actually carry, I believe, a couple of dozen megatons of nuclear warheads. So quite a decent amount of explosive damage in a single Oreshnik using a MIRV delivery system, which I believe all of them do. And so with that, I hope that does address it the best I can. And we actually got a super chat from 2 hot dog guys, 1 cup. I like that name. It's a pretty funny one. And he said, can we get a Pimp Marmot sign-off? And, you know, I wouldn't pull it out if it wasn't for anyone but you. 2 hot dog guys, 1 cup. What's up, bitches? Hey!
Oh, hello there, Governor. Hello there. How you do?
It's the Pimp Marmot, and he's here to sign us off. Look at that. Look at that. It's a wonderful thing. And I just wanted to throw it up on screen really quickly. But a big thanks to you once again, 2 hot dog guys, 1 cup, for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And we have reached the end of tonight's stream. I've got to thank you all so much once again for watching. It's been an absolute honor and a pleasure to have, at the peak tonight, 12.7 thousand people here. And over the course of the entire stream, 103,000 people, 104,000 people actually, have watched this stream. We thank you all once again, and we are entirely honored to be y'all's primary source of news. We will see you all tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern Time to cover the next 24 hours of news from around the world. And if there is enough news to cover in the middle of the day tomorrow, I will be the one. I shall be the one to lead the way and make y'all a short war video to tell y'all what's going on. There just wasn't enough for Matthew to make one today, and it's always iffy. We never know if there will be enough to make one tomorrow, but hopefully there will be, and if there is, I'll be the one making it. So with that, good night, good luck, take care, stay safe, Slava Ukraini, and long live the Lee Spring Army. The Lee Spring Army will never die.
And with that, folks, thank you all for joining us once again tonight and all 104,000 people that were here by the end of the stream. And we will be seeing you tomorrow on the short video and the nightly stream. So be sure to join us for that. And of course, Slava Ukraine, Heroam Slava, get some rest, and good night.